What makes a great story for a book, a graphic novel, a script, a short story, or any other format? And how do we know that this idea is worth investing in? How do we know that it's worth investing the months, years, resources, time, energy, devotion to the characters, the themes, the worlds, and all the other things? How do we know that it's worth it? Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into what makes a great story idea and how do we know that we should actually be investing time into it. And then we're going to be accepting, reviewing, and doing a deep dive into story ideas that were submitted from the community. So, if you have a great story idea, whether it's for a book, a script, or something else altogether, maybe it's been bouncing around in your head for years, or maybe you just came up with it on the spot. Regardless, submit the story idea right now. What I will do is I will drop the link down in the chat as well. It's also down in the YouTube video description. But if you want to submit your story idea, submit that now. We have about, I want to say about 9 or 10 submissions today. So we'll try to get through all of the story ideas, but regardless, submit it. What we're going to be doing is we'll be looking at each story idea. We'll be asking ourselves, if we were to take this on as a project, how would we flesh it out? What would we do in the first steps? And what would the entire journey look like? Whether it's a standalone book or a series, a short story or a script. So that will be a lot of fun. I'll be inviting a couple members from the Right Now community to come join me, and we'll talk through different processes on dealing with story ideas. And then stick around till the end because we're going to be voting. That's right. You'll be voting on which stories were the best. With so many story submissions, we will do a rank type of voting. So we'll vote in batches and we'll lead up to the number one fan favorite. And don't you worry because I also submitted a story idea, and we're going to see which idea is the fan favorite. But no favoritism to me. Don't give me any favoritism. That's why I have made all these story ideas anonymous. So we do not know whose idea is which. All right, beautiful. So, welcome to the first ever story idea and pitch wars. I'm Kaufman, and I'm on a mission to show the unpublished authors of the world that the entire writing process, brainstorming, writing, and editing can be both fun and easy with the right framework. So come join the community right now. All right, perfect. And for those of you who are tuning in on the replay, I got you covered. After the stream ends, time codes will be added to the stream. So you can hop to the part whether you want to learn more about the deep dive in the story idea process, or you want to jump straight ahead to the voting and see which story ideas were crowned the victors. Perfecto. All right, let me hop into this chat. Doreen, hey everybody, who else is excited to hear all these story ideas? Let me tell you, I've only briefly looked at each of the submissions just to make sure that they matched what we're looking for. But I haven't actually looked into the descriptions yet because I wanted to save the surprise for the live stream element. I am so stoked. We have quite a mix of different ideas. I'm very much looking forward to diving into them. Hey, what's up, Courtney? Welcome, welcome, my friend. And we got Desolate and Soul and Nil to War. The pitch wars. Which idea is going to win? Or maybe during the stream itself, you come up with a really great story idea. Submit now. We'll be hopping into the story section in just a little bit. Let's vote and we will pitch the best. May the best story idea win. Hey, what's up, Jenny? Welcome to the stream, my friend. Welcome, welcome. All right, perfect. So, as we're hopping into it, we're going to go straight into the process. So, what makes a great story idea? How do we know that this story idea that it's worth investing our lives into? Because think about it. When you start working on a project, whether it's a script, a book, or whatever, think about how much time you're investing into that project. Whether it's a couple months, a couple years. Most writers, at least the average unpublished writer that I've spoken with, generally spends anywhere between 2 to 5 years on a single idea for their series, whether it is a standalone book, a standalone script, or something much, much more. And then not only are we investing that time into it, we're having to invest resources, energy, and it is a process. So, how do we know what's the right story idea to choose from? I'm curious if you're here in the stream right now, what are some of your favorite stories? Whether it's a movie, a TV show, a book, a graphic novel, a short, a short story, or something altogether. Drop it down in the chat. I would love to hear from you. What are your favorite stories? For those of you who've joined me lately, you know some of my favorites. I tend to go much more in the fantasy genre. I go a mix of fantasy and sci-fi. Some of my favorite stories that come to mind, I'm always a Game of Thrones fan, but Game of Thrones is a little bit more of the mainstream. And I think the core reason I loved Game of Thrones was because George R. R. Martin subverts expectations for the character journeys in a way that felt fresh and hadn't been done before prior to that story. Right? We were not expecting most heroes in stories have plot armor. So when you kill off the heroes and the story still works because it's such a diverse cast, that is one of the things I loved. One of my older favorite movies, V for Vendetta, a great movie about I would say it's a little bit of a dystopian. It's like modern dystopian type society. I love the idea behind the freedom and the character journey that it takes. It's a very much an anti-hero story. And don't we all love a good underdog story, my friends? Let's see. And then what are some other good classics? As I kind of look up on my bookshelf, one of my favorite classics, Don Quixote. This is a much, it's a very, very old classic novel, but who doesn't love a story about an old man at the end of his years, who essentially has a form of dementia and is traveling around the lands thinking and believing that he is a knight. He believes that all of his actions are saving people, but the reality is he's actually just making everything worse. And it's written in such a way that it's very clever, fun, and engaging. So who doesn't love things that have to deal with memory? As you know, clearly that's what I'm doing with Last Scarecrow. So let's see. I got a couple of shout outs here. Earth's Children series. Ooh, I don't think I've actually read the Earth's Children series. I'm always curious. Anytime you guys make great suggestions, I always have to check them. Let's see, Earth's Children series. A series of epic historical fiction novels. Ooh, that sounds really interesting. I generally don't do historical fiction as much, but I really like these cover art. Set circa 30,000 years before the present day. Historical fiction is a really popular genre as well. I could totally see how that one would work very well, and I can see this is a little bit more of a classic since it looks like the original books came out in the 80s. Wonderful. And Courtney, we have Obsessed with Rise of the King by R.J. Kane and all books from Layla Roberts. Rise of the King. Whew. All right, so let's see. Rise of the King. I'm definitely going to be looking this up. Rise of the King by R.J. Kane. Perfect. The Underworld series. Ooh, interesting. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at here. So, Rise of the King, based on the myth of Hades and Persephone. Courtney, you already knew. You knew I would love the Greek mythology, didn't you? That's very cool. Based on the myth of Hades and Persephone. Hades is a very, very fun character, by the way. And he is a supporting character in one of my scripts that I've been working on for a couple years now. So the Underworld series is a fresh take on the myth that challenges common perceptions of good, evil, light, and dark. Excellent. So there's something that really speaks here, right? So even as we look at the blurb, right? What is something that stands out about this just from the initial take of it, right? So this speaks to themes of good, evil, light, and dark. A reason that light and dark is always so resonant with a lot of writers. And let's see, I'm actually going to pull up Soul Years Again, Earth's Children. Let's pull it up on Amazon for these books that I don't have too much familiarity. Let's see, To the Dawn of Modern Humans, The Clan of the Cave Bear, A Natural Disaster, Who Others Are Homeland, Cannot Leave the Girl to Die. Okay, so it looks like the inciting incident is about a clan of people who are used to they have their own world and they have to leave. It looks like a bear clan have to leave their original clan, but Isaac cannot leave the girl to die. So they take, it looks like, a young girl with them. And something that resonates with most people is having to start maybe having an original type of family, original type of dynamic, and then having to turn it on its head and having to move or change everything. I think the family dynamic, that's what this really speaks to, just from looking at the quick blurb. The underworld really speaks to light and dark. We all deal with demons. We all deal with the highs and the lows of life. So this resonates on a human level. Let's see. And Doreen, you're like, anything by Austin Burroughs. Let's see. Austin Burroughs. Oh, yeah, yeah. I actually remember Running with Scissors was a really popular one. This is how surviving what you think you can't. And I believe a lot of his are based on true stories. I know Running with Scissors is one of the more popular ones because of memoirs. Why do we enjoy memoirs? Because it is a true story that is so unbelievable that we have to learn more about it. Memoirs are definitely a very popular genre. Let's see. And then what else do we have? 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. 100 Years of Solitude. 100 Years of Solitude is a 1967 novel by Clement author Marquez that tells the multi-generational story of the Buendia family, whose patriarch Jose Buendia founded the fictitious town of the Macondo. The novel is often cited as one of its supreme achievements in world literature. Wow. It tells the story of the rise and fall, birth and death of the mythical town of Macondo to the history of the Buendia family. Interesting. So it almost has this kind of almost feels like it has a element of folklore to it, which is really intriguing. And once again, it goes to the core idea of family. Family is once again another element of this story that really works and resonates. I think already before I even jump into the psychology behind this, I think I already see a trend for all these stories, which are completely different genres, yet all of them already have one thing that I can see in common, that cross genres, that cross types of work. Let's see, Desolate. I like the comic The Crow and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So I haven't read The Crow, I do know Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the original book. While the movies were great, the movies were absolutely fun, the book is a much, much better read. Why does Alice's Adventures in Wonderland work? Because it is a fish out of water. It is an underdog type story where we have everyone used to be a kid at one point in their life, obviously, and now they're thrown into a mystical, magical world where they know absolutely nothing. And isn't that the same type of journey that most of us have to take whenever we leave the house, whenever we have to mature and go into the later stages of life beyond school, starting our own lives, starting adulting, and going through that entire process, right? Who can't resonate with having to experience all these things that they don't understand from being an adult? But it's viewed through a children's lens. One of the reasons that Alice Adventure in Wonderland works so well and resonates with a bunch of readers. Let's see. My pew pew Ayla, my sister loves Gino. Yeah, so we have some really, really good recommendations in there. We have some absolutely great recommendations. So the one thing that I see that all of these stories have in common, and this is my theory that makes a really great story. It is the human component to it. What is if you go to the heart of your story idea, what is the emotional truth of the human's journey in it? Whether it's a human, whether it's a non-human, it doesn't matter if you're writing about the truest story of someone climbing Mount Everest or a story about a dragon learning to be a real dragon, right? It doesn't matter. At the heart of it, the core is what is the human element that we can relate to? What is that core emotional thing that we as writers can draw from our own experience? Obviously, I've never been a dragon, but I can resonate with the emotions of anger, hate, happiness, joy, triumph. And then the challenge we pose to ourselves is how do we externalize those emotions? Right now, even from looking over these blurbs of some of your favorites, it's what is the core emotional truth of the idea that is going to really resonate with the readership. So, when we think about story ideas that we want to develop and that we want to flesh out, we have to ask ourselves, what is the core emotional truth of this story? And why would somebody who knows nothing about me connect with it? Whether it's about family, because family is something that everyone can relate with, whether it's about a romance, a relationship, whether it is about being thrust into a new world. Now, of course, there's so much that goes into the execution of the idea from the whole writing and editing and the whole process. But the core truth is how will this idea resonate with other people, other humans who are not myself? Right? We have to think about if I were to give this book, if I were to show this script to somebody at school, if I were to show this to somebody at work and they had a similar interest, would they like it? Would they appreciate it? Would they hate it? Why or why not? So, this is one of the elements that goes into making a great story idea. So once you have this idea, right? And usually we draw from inspiration, usually we draw from experience. Maybe we draw from something we've seen in the media, maybe we've drawn from a life story, regardless of where the idea comes from. Once we have the core idea and we're like, okay, this is something that I want to flesh out. This is something I want to take further. How do we know that it's worth investing a high degree of time into it? How do we know that this is a story worth telling? And what I always tell unpublished authors is I tell them this. If it's an idea that you recently came across, or maybe something you've been bouncing around for a while, you have to ask yourself, why is this story idea, why is it one that only you can tell? Why is it a story idea that resonates with you to such a degree, such a deep level? If the idea isn't inspiring you enough, the challenge, and this happens with a lot of unpublished writers, is the challenge is you'll start off with the story idea. You'll come up with the ideas because we all loving coming up with ideas for our stories because that's the fun part. It's the easy part. But what about when you start having to deal with life's responsibilities, right? In 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And then you don't have as much time. And then the time you do have, you want that time to be fun, but you're at a point in the story development process where it's not as fun because there's a higher degree of work, writing, editing, whatever that goes into it. So the way to circumvent that, and each of you see it on my live streams each and every day, right? You have to genuinely, authentically, from a deep place, love and connect and resonate with the story, with the core story that you want to tell. And When you run into obstacles in the brainstorming process, then you have to ask yourself, what are other elements? What are themes? What are characters? What are journeys? What are world building mechanics that I can use as part of the story, right? Because you can pick things that are outside of the core story and put them into the story and try new things, right? And you can try them because if you're enjoying it, if those are themes that you want to talk through, whether that's through a script or through a book, then you're going to enjoy that part of the process much, much more. Right. My theory is always have fun with the story development process. All right, beautiful. So those are just a couple components between picking a story that really resonates with people and making sure that it is authentic to you. So that way you can be inspired by it when you're working on it for 5 years, right? What you don't want to do is get a story that you're loosely interested in and then be a year into it and then feel frustrated because you're like, okay, I've invested a year of my time, but I'm kind of bored of the story now, right? And sometimes when we come up with really big projects, really big story ideas, they almost become too big and we put so much time and energy, it creates this frustration, or what we as writers like to call writer's block. And then we get blocked, and then we do not finish our stories and we don't publish those books or option those scripts. So when I think about my process and I think about what is my story, how do I come up with a story, and how do I figure out that this is a story that I want to tell? So I'm going to walk you real quick through what I did with Last Scarecrow. Right now, some of you probably already know the story. Some of you already know that. Let's see, let me pull it up. So, some of you already know that Last Scarecrow originated from an idea from a 2-page free write. When I made this challenge to myself, and I want to say back in December, the original challenge to myself was, hey, I want to be more consistent as a writer. How do I make myself more consistent? Okay, I'll do a live stream process. I'll hold myself accountable. But before I went in the live stream, I didn't know what I was going to be writing. I was like, okay, I'll go back to one of my 50 projects because I have a lot of projects, right? Some further along, some not as far along. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll finish a couple projects in the year because that's probably what will make sense. Now, as I let's see. So where did that picture go? All right. So as I then started the live streaming process, I came up with the idea for Last Scarecrow on literally the very first day. And it was very, very happenstance, right? Let's see. I'll see if I can find it on here. Perfect. All right. So I came up with it on the very first day based off of free write. Right. And here you go. So you guys can see it. So this was the image for it. Right. And you see, I used to do a lot of free write images. Here's an image, do a 20-minute sprint and come up with a story for it. So this was just a 2-page free write. This led me to creating the first chapter of a story about a scarecrow getting their hat stolen. Now, over the course of the first month, I bounced around. I did different types of free writes, but I came back to this, I want to say, a couple times. And that first chapter turned into 2 chapters and then 3 chapters. And I was just having fun, right? What was the story that I wanted to tell? I got inspired by a scarecrow following some type of road. I had a forest following a tricky crow. The challenge that I posed to myself, because I love challenges, was, can I create a character? Can I create a scarecrow character first off that is more powerful and engaging than any other type of scarecrow character in pop culture or previous storytelling, right? Scarecrow that comes to mind is always Wizard of Oz. So then I challenged myself, all right, can I create a more iconic and memorable scarecrow than the scarecrow in Wizard of Oz? I was like, perfect, up to the challenge. So for me, being a gamer, challenges are perfect. So as I got to the end of the month, I want to say about probably like 4 or 5 chapters. And then I hit this realization. I was like, okay, so I clearly have this scarecrow traveling through this type of post-apocalyptic land. There's remains of humans and remains of technology to some extent. And then I asked myself, I'm like, okay, so does this feel like a story that I want to invest time in? These are the checks that I had to ask myself. First off, was I interested in developing the character? Yes, because the story, whatever story you're writing, is about a core character's journey. I asked myself, was I interested in spending time with this character, taking them through a long journey, beginning to end, whether that was one book or a couple books? And the answer was yes, because I was motivated by the challenge. Now, it's not just the character that you have to stay motivated for, right? I also had to ask myself, what about the world? And originally, the world wasn't fleshed out at all because I had just come up. It was basically just a scarecrow waking up in a field and then going through a forest. And you'll see when I get into the second round of editing for my second draft, you'll see how I would say like the first 15% of it is just very basic in comparison to how much scarecrow evolved throughout the journey. And I asked myself, what type of world do I want to spend time in? I tend to have a theme with my writing. What types of themes do I love to explore as a writer? Now, I started with this core idea of a scarecrow going through following this road through this weird world. But then I also infused, okay, I was like, okay, there's these types of themes that I love to tackle. I want to tackle things that resonate with loss of memory. I want to tackle things that resonate with what does it mean to be human. I also love to be challenged. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to see if I can create a story with a bunch of animals and do it in a way that feels like it can still resonate with people. And then I also asked myself, okay, what type of world building do I want to do? What type of world sounds fun to me at this stage of my life? I've developed a number of worlds, but right now I've been the most motivated by the post apocalyptic type world. And I asked myself, do I feel that I have enough motivation to create my own post apocalyptic type world that I feel like hasn't been done before, right? A post apocalyptic world that involves animals, that involves a type of magic. And then I asked myself, like, okay, I'm going to take this a step deeper. What is something that I feel like that I could have fun with, that I could have a lot of time to flesh out the different areas of it? Taking it beyond post-apocalyptic, well, I'm like, okay, magic. So what about magic would be fun that I haven't seen before? What about the creation of magic? Because we see so many stories, we see so many worlds where the magic system is part of the world and it is always introduced in the character journey in some way, shape, or form. But something that I haven't personally seen, at least in the original books, it's usually referenced in later books, but I haven't seen a story that where the world revolves around the creation of magic. And I asked myself, I was like, okay, that's interesting. So what if we lived in a world where magic came into existence? How would the world respond to it? And that led me down that series of thinking of, okay, this is the type of world I want to explore because I have these list of themes. I have a list of characters that I'm interested in developing. I have a list of themes. I have an overall concept for the world, and I have an overall plot that I think could be kind of cool. So, as you can see, the more that I started coming up with the ideas from the characters, the themes, the worlds, and then the core story that I wanted to tell, the more I started getting inspired by this journey that I knew I would take. Now, I asked myself, okay, how long do I want to spend on this? Well, as a live stream process, I'm like, okay, I can commit to doing this book in a year. I feel confident I can go through the whole book. I can write it, edit it, and publish it in a year. So that was my goal. That was my challenge to myself. I set a clear expectation for myself to get this for this book process with also knowing what my schedule would be like. If I was a student, if I had a full-time responsibility or job outside of that, then that would be a little difficult for me, right? So then I would have to push my timeline a little bit because I may not have that time to invest. right? So I was clear about my timeline and my expectations. And then I set a daily goal with my live streams to do the writing process. So by coming up with a story idea and then by setting clear expectations for myself, I've given myself a timeline so that way I minimize the chance of me getting frustrated with this story idea. Perfect. And that is my process behind the story idea development. I it's almost like I have this internal checkbox of like, okay, I need to check all these different things. I need to check all these different development things in my mind for me to feel like I have enough to create, enough to develop, and enough that will keep me inspired. So that's my process. I'm kind of curious for those, if you're in the stream right now, what's your favorite part about the story development process? Is it the brainstorming? I feel like most writers love the brainstorming portion of it. I'm very curious. Is brainstorming your favorite part or the developing of your world? Is that your favorite part of the storytelling process? Drop it down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. All right, so let's see what we got here. Let's see. Jenny was saying, I'm a big Abby Jimenez fan. Her newest story is called Just for the Summer. She has an incredible talent for making me laugh and cry, right? It's those emotions. It's once again, if an author can make us feel something, if an author can make us feel something, that is success. How do we make our readers feel something? We create an authentic character experience. If that experience is has a truth to it that we can then translate through the character's actions, the dialogue, the plot, the world, and all those things, then that is what success will look like. Absolutely. And I always like to tell writers, like, okay, what are your favorite stories? And there was a reason I had you list some of your favorite stories, because then you think about like, okay, why are those your favorite stories? Specifically, why split, like what element of it? Was it because it made you laugh and cry? Was it because you learned something from it? Nonfiction books, self-help books tend to have a much more takeaway of I want to learn a thing, right? I need to learn some type of mindset skill thing to improve my life, right? Whereas fiction tends to be I want to learn a thing, but it's a little bit more escapism because I also want to be entertained, right? I want to learn a philosophical thing about the world through whatever genre is my preference. Courtney says personal growth is what always hooks me into a story. Mhm. And I think because that's important to you, so that's a core truth of having to grow from different stages in your life, right? So because that resonates with your life, of course, that would then resonate in any books that you see. And who doesn't love a great character who has to grow? Actually, I don't think we can have a character who doesn't grow, right? Or at least we can't have a protagonist who doesn't grow, anyways. Otherwise, what journey are they going through if they're not going through some type of personal growth, regardless of what character type they are? Let's see. Nevermore. My theory is writing is pain. You know what? I've heard that theory before, Never. By the way, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining. So, my theory is writing is pain. So, writing can be a challenging process. Writing can absolutely be a challenging process, but I don't think it has to be a painful process. It does not have to be painful. I think we have to recognize where's our weakness in the writing process, and then we work on our weaknesses, right? And if you've been clear with your timeline of like, hey, I'm gonna spend the next 5 years working on this, you're less likely to get frustrated when you have to take a break. If you are working on the things that you suck at with your writing, maybe you really suck at dialogue and your dialogue always sounds flat. The great thing is you can improve on that. We live in a day and age where Google can be your best friend. There are so many writing influencers out there. There's authors out there where you can learn step by step, or maybe you join an online course or a membership type program, or you get a coach, whatever it is that you do, there are ways for you to work on your weakness. Absolutely. That's always my theory with that. Now, something that brings me up, never, if the idea is okay, so writing I feel like for some characters, I need to feel that emotional, that pain or that emotional low to really capture and resonate and put that into my character. There can be a truth for that. There is That's something I used to do for my storytelling years ago, right? I would wait until I was at an emotional high or an emotional low to write. And then I felt like, okay, I can only channel this emotion because I'm so frustrated and so angry with life into this character right now. And it's going to be true. That is a way of going about it. I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong way to that. The only challenge with that method, and that's a little bit more of like a method writer. I think that's the way I would frame that. The only challenge to that is then you're only able to get to a place of writing when you feel an emotional state, right? So then what you're doing is you're saying, I'm letting my the writing process be dictated by my emotions, as compared to I'm letting the writing process be dictated by logic and emotions, right? By a mix, by strategy, right? If you're strategic about the writing process, you can also be emotional when you do it, right? But if you create a strategy, then you're going to be able to be consistent as compared to an inconsistent approach of like, all right, this week I wrote a half a book and then I stopped writing for the next year, right? And I think part of that goes into understanding what your process is. And this is different for everyone. This is one of the things that I love, 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 love the writing process because it's different for each and every writer. There's no right or wrong way to be a writer. The only thing that's important is you just have to write and you have to come up with systems that help you stay consistent, keep learning, and finally publish those books. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, my friend. Developing the world. Yes. As we both know, we both resonate with world development. Absolutely. I love rewriting and editing. Doreen, you're so unique. I feel like there's so many writers out there who like hate the editing process. I love the editing process because to me, maybe it speaks to my gamer nature a little bit, but to me that's a challenge because I'm like, okay, this is the story I have. These are the things that need to be fixed. I need to get it to a certain place because I want it to be readable. I want it to be a great experience. So I completely resonate with that. When I'm researching and things click into place. Yes. One of the best things is when you have the core of a story, you have maybe the world, maybe you have the plot, maybe you have the rough draft. And then as you think through things, or maybe you write a scene, or maybe you research something, and then suddenly it just you get the idea. It just like clicks. It's like it makes sense. It's almost like with the story, we're putting in puzzle pieces into this a big puzzle, and we take more puzzle pieces through research, ideation, and writing, and then the more pieces we put in, it suddenly takes that one piece, and then suddenly more of the picture is visible. I know I've had that happen to me a couple times, or I mean, I've had that happen to me a lot, but with Last Scarecrow, that happened to me a few times, especially over these past couple weeks. I think yesterday when I was developing the last Dragonkin or the Dragonkin character, something about when we were developing the story, something about their backstory clicked into place, and that clicking resonated with a plot, a thread, a world building mechanic, and some principles for the overall story. And now I'm like, oh my god, that's perfect because now I know what the overall like I knew as a an idea what the overall story was, but now I had some more logistics that had clicked into place for me. Absolutely love that. All right, let's see. And then John, hey, welcome to the stream, my friend. Yes, because you can do that while you perform mindless tasks at your making money job. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's a great thing, right? This is what I always recommend. If you have a full-time job, right? Most of us unpublished authors, if you have a full-time job, in your downtime when you have a break or on your lunch breaks, like don't trip about writing during the breaks. Spend your breaks learning and researching. Go follow writing influencers. Start a YouTube account and start a brand new YouTube account. And then on that YouTube account, only follow writing influencers, only follow authors, only follow the type of content that you want to show up. So then, even though you're at work, you can still get inspired and come up with new ideas. And then when you are intentional with when you're going to do your writing sprints, you will have the energy because, like, you know yourself, if you're trying to plan a writing sprint right when you get home, for one person that could be amazing. For one person, like, yeah, I'm motivated, I'm ready, I'm still feeling the vibe. Another person is like, no, I'm tired, it's too much. You just have to know yourself well enough to know when the right writing time is for you. Favorite story, Time and Again by Brees DJ Pancake. I absolutely love that name, by the way. Brees DJ Pancake. That's interesting. Let's see. Time and Again by Pancake. Time and Again. No cars move, they're stranded. Is a short story. And since I was just looking up here, it can also be found in the anthology American Gothic Tales. So, the American Gothic Tale tells the story of an aging murderer, a farmer who feeds the bodies of his victims to his hogs. Who doesn't love a good anti hero story? Absolutely. Right? 100%. One of the reasons that we love the serial killer type story so much, because even though all their actions are evil, there's always something about them that is redeemable, and we want to figure out, like, okay, what's the thing that makes them redeemable? What makes us want to root for them? Anti-heroes are very, very fun. 100% agreed. Writing for fun is easy. Writing something you like and the audience likes can be painful. Yeah, and I mean, I think that the painful part and the challenging part comes from, we have the core story, we fleshed out the world, the ideas, the characters. Now, how do I modify parts of the story, or how do I modify the process so that way I can ensure that a readership will like it as well, right? And that definitely has its own challenges. And I think that's why it comes down to being clear on what is your goal as a writer. If your goal is to make money as a writer, then you're going into that process knowing that that is the goal behind it. As compared to, if your goal is just to write and have fun, then you don't have to worry about the readership. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, whatever. Now, the challenge with readerships is people can be very picky, and we can do everything in our power to come up with the most amazing story ever, and it still might not resonate with people. We have to accept that once we put it out to the world, assuming we've done all the right steps for our strategy, our marketing, and all the things to get it out there, we have to accept that a readership, people are going to consume it how they want to consume it, right? And I think if we're clear on what our expectations are, it makes it just a tad easier. And then we can get feedback, right? We can get feedback from a bunch of people, and I think that's how you make the writing, how you make that thing with your audience a little less painful, by getting feedback, right? Some people are going to love the thing, some people are going to hate the things, but then you can be like, okay, well, these things are interesting. What is there a way that I can find fun elements out of things that connect with those readers? And I think you really have to dig into the feedback loop and to be able to have fun with that part of the process. It's a lot more fun and quicker when you are inspired, but writing solely by that is only for the full-time writers with time on their hands to spare. Yeah, and I mean, it's a different process, right? So it's, if you're a full-time career author, then you obviously clearly you have a lot more time to write. I think that the challenge is, once you're earning enough to be sustainable, then usually you're on different deadlines as compared to somebody who's still writing in their free time. And then the difference is, you have a different timeline, you have different expectations, you have different consistency for your writing process. A full-time author probably has a couple books published under their belt. They may or may not be represented by a traditional publishing house. They may or may not be represented by an agent. And while they do have absolutely a lot more time, I don't know if it would necessarily be free, because, unless you're making a lot of money on your books, right? If you're already making a lot of money, then you have to get the book out or else you don't get paid. It's different than having a 9 to 5 or an employee type job because it's just different. It's like comparing a freelancer mindset to being to an employee mindset. It's just different. When I was a kid, I started writing to try to understand feelings that I struggle to explain. Now it's a challenge of the artful communication of weird concepts and storytelling that keeps me coming back, which I absolutely love that. And I think that's part of the process is learning how to be a better writer, right? Learning how we can share our experiences, like the emotional things that we learned as a child, and then how do we find the right words, how do we find the right format, the right structure, the right characters, the right things. And that's part of the process, right? And that's something that I love as part of the writing process. Absolutely agreed, Penelope. Hey, what's up, Stephanie? Welcome, welcome. We're just talking about story ideas and how we come up with story ideas and the process behind it. Everyone has some different ideas and different methods, which is super cool. By the way, if you're just hopping into the stream, welcome. This is the first ever story idea and pitch wars. So, do you have a story idea that you think would be awesome? Maybe you just came up with it. Maybe it's been bouncing around in your head for years. Follow the submission link down in the YouTube description. And I also posted it in the chat. Let's see. Yep. So I posted it at the beginning of the chat. So follow that description and submit a story idea right now. And we will be reviewing our stories shortly. So we're having an absolutely great conversation. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I am a crazy daily writing live streamer. I believe the entire writing process, brainstorming, writing, editing, publishing and marketing, which I have yet to get to, but I do believe that the entire process can be fun. I really do. You just have to have the right mindset, the right framework, and the right strategies in place that work with your lifestyle. So if you're subscribed, we have daily writing sprints, writing community, author interviews, writing techniques, a newsletter, and much more to help you publish your first book, to help you improve the process. So if you're following or subscribed, you'll be alerted when we go live. All right. Beautiful. Wonderful. So, with that being said, that is a good transition. So, let me go pull up our ideas so we can get into it. I want to start looking at some of the ideas that we have. Excellent. So, we have some really great ideas. So, it looks like we have, let's see, I had to review a couple of them. Okay, so we're going to get started. So what I will do, let's see, I'm going to pull up a word processor. Yeah, I was thinking if I should show it on the Google Docs form. No, I'll put it into a Word document so we can use highlighting. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to hop into reviewing your book or script ideas. This is going to be super awesome. We're going to be deep diving. So what we'll do is we'll read what we have first, and then we'll talk about how would we flesh this out if we wanted to make this a fuller idea. All right, perfect. And then let me just check my email. Okay, so I have it all pulled up on my end. Let's see, give me just a second. Perfect. So let's see. There was one story idea somebody wanted me to delete, but I don't know which one. So this will be a learning process. We'll see how this goes. Okay, I think I know which one it is. Okay. Because I think there was one repeat and I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. Okay, perfect. So I think I figured it out. So here's what we're going to do. Once again, submit your story ideas. What I'm going to do is we're going to review them together. We'll have fun. We'll read through it, and then we'll kind of talk about which story ideas really stand out. Now, I've invited a couple other writers from the WriteNow community to come join me because this is a collaborative process, and we're all going to be talking and voting together because I am only one writer. So I'm going to bring up to the stream. I have both Penelope and everyone's favorite Chat Soul coming to the stage. Welcome, welcome, my friends.
Chat Soul is in the house.
Chat Soul is in the house. Why do you need Chat GBT when you can have Chat Soul? Guaranteed to get more writing. So your audio is maybe. So it sounds like we'll be able to get that worked out in a second. And by the way, Mass Toaster, welcome to the stream. My idea starts with a catchy opening lines. The opening lines are super important. If we don't if you've managed to hook readers in the cover art, the blurb, and they actually I'm going to invest time, and the opening lines suck. Oof, that's just such an easy miss, because it's hard to get people to even look at the book from the cover and the blurb. And if that actually works and they read it and they're like, no, it's not, it could be an amazing story. But if the first chapter sucks, oof, such a missed opportunity. So I totally resonate with that, Toaster. And then Sean, welcome to the stream, my friend. I write more shorter stories that get in and get out. I feel like long form is so much terrifying. And sometimes that works for a lot of writers. I think there's been times in my life where I've been really busy. So I focused on creating web series because they were shorter scripts that I actually had the time to create. Now I'm at a point where I actually have the time to write a book every day. That wasn't always the case, but that's why I'm doing a book, because I know I have the time that I can invest in it in a reasonable time. And a year timeline for me is a reasonable time, but that could be different for everyone. I'm kind of curious, Penelope, and then Soul, if your audio is back in, how long does it usually take you to to work through a single project?
It took 20 years for mine. So
Ooh, 20 years. But you see, so that's like a series though, right? For the overall series?
No, that was one book.
Ooh, man, 20 years for one book. And what a book it must have been. As I know,
you have a copy of it.
Huh?
You have a copy of it.
Woo, I do have a copy of it. I know. I'm
for the
so
most
bad.
part, my projects, the ones I've been working on the past 2 months, take me about week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. I've got a couple outliers right now, but kind of having problems with those.
But sometimes we have to really invest time, and we also have to know we have to be at a right point in our lives to actually be able to finish the story. You've been working on it for 20 years. That means you spent a lot of time brainstorming. Then you probably got distracted by life. Then you got writing, and then you got distracted again. And it was kind of this back and forth process. At least you finished it.
Yeah.
I'm like, at least you finished it. There's so many writers out there who start an idea and then it just never gets finished.
Yeah, I've had ideas where, they're not bad, but I just scrapped them because it's just no. Yeah, they weren't that good and they weren't going anywhere.
Yeah. So I decided to be a serious writer. I have a degree in it, so I decided to be a capital writer about 3 years ago when COVID hit. Yeah. And it took me about 3 years to write 2.5 years to write my first book. And then after that, I was like, no, I have to actually put out some more product than a book every 3 years if I'm going to, survive as a writer. So the next book I wrote was The Love Spell Murders, and it took 2.5 months. And I wrote the next one in a month.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, but that was a process.
Those are also shorter stories though, aren't they?
Yeah, well, no, I have another series of short stories that I wrote. I think I wrote Useful Idiots in 2 weeks, and it was 20,000 words. So
Okay.
I can write really fast. I'm a sprinter sometimes instead of a marathon runner, which is problematic. So that's why I'm trying to stay like three books ahead of my schedule right now.
Right. And I think that also knows with recognizing your own schedule and your own consistency. There's been times where I've worked on short stories and times where I've worked on these like series, like full on series, right?
I think that at the beginning of anybody's writing journey, there's that process. It took Soul 20 years, to write that first one, 3 to write my first actual novel. Actually, it took me like 2 days. The first thing I ever wrote, like I wrote like 10,000 words in 2 days, and it was like utter crap. But the story was there, and but I mean, it was useful because that was kind of the end of what I ended up turning into a series. So like there's that whole figuring out how to write as a writer thing, and that can take a really long time. Like if you're in that process, just stick with it, definitely, because there is a light at the end of that tunnel. There is a final chapter at the end of that tunnel, whether it takes 20 years or longer.
Well, so I can totally I can resonate with the 20-year journey because I actually wrote my very first, well, I'll tell you not my very first, but my first big project, which was a fantasy book called The Crystals. I wrote it in between I think I spent about 5 years writing it. And this was for 5 years writing the rough draft when I was growing up, when I sat in the back of the class. So this spanned about 10 notebooks worth.
Yeah,
And
nice. 10 notebooks.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, there's a reason people called me the writer. And there was it was an epic fantasy story in this like fantasy universe. It took me 5 years to write the rough draft through pen and paper through these notebooks. It took me about 2 years to transfer it into a digital format. I got the second draft, and then that's where I left it off. So I wasn't at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, I just wasn't ready to really keep working on this because I knew how much work I would have to go into reinvesting it. I probably started that when I was in middle school, and that will probably be one of those lifelong projects where that'll probably be like a 40-year project. Realistically, when I'm ready to return to it. Like I feel you there. And some projects are like that. And I think that's one reason a lot of writers work on different projects.
I just saw an image of you with a cane, like, I'm going to get this damn book done. You just
What was that?
I need another. Do you kids know what a notebook is? I need one.
Like back in my day, we used to use notebooks for writing.
I actually used to do the same thing. I wrote Pirates, the original versions of it. In fact, actually, Pirates was meant to be a comic book. It was actually meant to be a graphic novel called Lockjaw, and for some reason that turned into like this whole thing I've got now. And I had it on like 5 different notebooks within 2 years, and then my mom accidentally threw the original copies out.
Oh no!
She didn't know it was in fold or something. I'm not mad or anything. I'm mad at myself for leaving it there, but I remembered most of it, and I was able to transfer it, and it just kept changing and stuff. So finally, I started putting in a computer, and well, now I've got what I've got now. So,
by the way, we have some great comments here in the chat. So it looks like Doreen, you asked a great question. If you're reviewing ours, do we just stay quiet to keep it anonymous? So I'm actually going to leave that up to you guys. So like I said, we have, it looks like we have about 12 submissions now. So if you've submitted, you can totally speak up if you want to ask questions or be involved in the collaboration. Totally no worries. It doesn't have to be anonymous, but the reason I was trying to was more so that way for the voting aspect. We're not doing any favoritism. It was more for that than anything else. But totally, if you want to speak up, more power to you. Absolutely. Like if you submitted an idea and you're like, hey, I want to be involved in this development process, yeah, absolutely speak up. No worries. Like I said, this is our first Pitch Wars stream. So I'm always trying new things to really figure out what brings you the most value. And both of you in here with me as well, Penelope and Soul. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah. No problem.
Fun to be
here.
It's always fun. This is going to be a fun one. Yeah. Soul, did you come up with anything for the Pitch Wars?
Yes.
I did too. Like at the last minute, I threw something in. Like
I know. So. I have something as well. We'll see.
Yes.
Nobody will be able to guess what mine is. I'm not being facetious at all. Okay.
Is it in space? If it's in space,
you guys will see when we get to a
mermaids in space, isn't
it? Mermaids in space. Let's see. And then genre, like some people think that the short story genre is very hard to get right. If you write in that genre, I believe it helps you be a better storyteller. Absolutely agreed. I think because shorter story is also a shorter commitment. And for anybody who's writing as a part-time hobby, you're actually able to get through the story, right? And essentially with the short story, it's less about an overarching world. It tends to be more about a scene or a couple scenes in a short snapshot of a character's journey.
And those
That's
can
another reason
always get
fan
drawn
fiction
out.
works well too. Fan fiction is another one because you get to focus on the character and less on the world building. Let's see. Oh, Courtney, I think Courtney was asking you, Soul, about your book. How many words is that book?
I answered.
How many was it? I was curious as well. Like
Burning Ember turned out to be about
100,000 words.
No, Burning Ember actually turned out to be about 156,000, I think.
Mm-hmm. They'd have to make up a number, a new number of Soul ever.
900,023.
It would be a Google of words or something like whatever, like 1 million.
1 million. Oh my goodness. Like anytime that I look at that NaNoWriMo goal, I still ask myself, how did somebody write 3 million words in a month? I'm still trying to.
I'm honestly going to try that this year. I'm going to try the NaNoWriMo thing. I have yet to do that, so I really need to.
We believe in you, chat Soul.
I'm going to leave that one to Soul. I don't write that fast. Or that
anybody can write. If anyone can break the world record of 3 million words, Chat Soul can do it.
Chat Soul can do it.
They never shared what quality the story was. They just said it was 3 million words. So you know what? Maybe it was just a 3 million word garbage pile of who knows. Hey, what's up, Tiara? Welcome to the stream, my friend. Let's see. Oh, perfect. I saw you said that. Hey. Yeah, and then John actually made a really good call out. 20K words is a 90-minute read, right? And this is something that that readers don't always take into consideration. Most readers are thinking about me, myself, and I. What type of reading experience am I going to get out of it? They don't always think about the author's process. They don't care if it took you 20 years to write it or 20 days. Right? They care about what is the experience that's being created for me right now, because there's a million options out there. Now, this is different if somebody's reading your book because they're a friend or a family, or maybe they're part of your community. That's a little different, but the average reader is reading a book for some type of emotional experience or wants to learn something, or it's a type of escapism. So I think that's absolutely a really good call. It's just something to keep in mind, right?
Hey, Kaufman, Tiara wants to know if she can still submit.
Tiara, can we say? Yeah, absolutely. Let me throw in. We're getting more submissions, so let me throw the link in the chat again. It's down in the YouTube description, Tiara, but I'll throw it here one more time if you still want to submit ideas. So you see, I'm doing a good job of drawing it out so we get as many story ideas as possible. Let's see, what else do we got? Hey, what's up, Lucy? Welcome from the stream. Hey, from a cold and windy UK. I know fall is fast approaching. By the way, I'm actually kind of curious because we always have writers from all over the world. Where from the world are you coming from? Drop it down in the comments. I would love to hear. I think my gut tells me that we're like 70% US audience and 30% international, but I'm curious. Where from the world are you guys coming from? As I've shared before, I'm on West Coast. What was that, Soul?
I've mostly seen US, but I actually saw somebody the other day who I guess was Poland, I think it was. So
yeah, I know Marta is one of our Poland writers,
I think
Polish writers.
I think that's her.
Let's see. We got a couple of awesome. So Soul, you're Indiana. I'm currently Idaho, but I still consider myself a California native. Indiana also, a fellow Indiana writer. Mike, also from the UK, a fellow UK writer. We got Pennsylvania, the Pacific Northwest. Love it. I want to move to Seattle. It's my goal to live in Washington eventually. And the US, the East Coast. Wonderful. Yeah, so I know we always have a mix. We always have a mix of Pacific, Central, and East Coast. And then UK, I think our European audience is probably the second biggest. And then we have a splattering from Canada and Australia, I believe. Actually, we've had some from India as well. Now that I think about it, I would say a mix of Australia, Canada, and India. Absolutely. Yeah, we got LA over here. LA was in LA for a while. We got New Jersey. VA is, where's VA again? That
Virginia?
one is Virginia. I think VA. I'm pretty sure VA is Virginia. Yeah, so we definitely got a mix. We definitely got, which is awesome because it goes to show that writers were coming from all over the world, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about a writing community that's a virtual experience online. This wouldn't be possible, or this might not be possible by going to a local writers group or writers community. It could be, but where else are you going to get writers communities from people in just everywhere? And I think that's always awesome. All right, perfect. So let's hop into it. So I think we made some good progress. I wanted to give some more time to submit story ideas. And I also wanted to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Pew, pew.
Did you just say pew pew?
Pew, pew, pew.
Pew pew pew.
I think I said that on a previous stream and then forgot that I said it. And then
I love the sound. You
called
come
me
with
out.
your own sound effects. It's amazing.
Pew, pew, pew. I'm just going to come up with sound effects for each character I'm writing. It lets me speak to my actor vibe. Let's see. John is saying, I believe my prose has progressed a lot by me commenting on YouTube. Yeah, but I mean, by even leaving comments, like if you're focused on the way that you frame your comments, and I know, John, you do a lot more comedy, I could definitely see how that could help improve our writing. Absolutely.
Writing is writing.
Comment sections are their own nature and their own beast, especially once you start commenting on bigger channels and bigger videos and bigger things.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I used to write in a notebook. I got some fellow notebook writers. Mike Kaufman watched the episode of your reading of my book. Thanks for the feedback. Wonderful. Absolutely. I'm trying to think, Mike. I remember yours was either the Shadows of the Dreamwalker or the supernatural one with the vampires. I forgot. It was one of those two. Because I remember we had two mics in that show. I submitted a story idea. Wonderful, Stephanie. A and I. Yep. Perfect. 3 million words is way too much methamphetamine. Yeah, right. We don't know how that writer got through that one. Let me tell you. The era of the pew pew pew. Yeah, okay, cool, Mike. So a shot of the Dreamwalker. That was a cool story. Okay, so let's hop into it. So we have a good deal of responses here. Let me think of the best way to go about this. All right, so I'm going to pull up a Word document so we can get all these ideas in one place. Let's see. Do you guys want to switch reading the ideas with me? We'll switch off one at a time.
Yeah, that way we can save your voice.
I don't think my voice is going to die today. I haven't felt it yet, but I guess if we have any old man characters, well, Jerry could still be out on that one. Okay, so our very first idea, let me pull the screen up. Awesome. So what I will do, so we have our very first idea. Let's see, let me make sure everything is the right font.
What font are we using these days?
I'm using Georgia for everything. I think ever since I did the voting thing, that was the one that won. So I've just kind of stuck with Georgia ever since. For anyone who's my OG, who is an OG Kaufman's Corner member, the first 6 months, we all know, was the Comic Sans.
That can be a pop quiz question at some point.
That will be. Give it like a couple years from now. I'll be like, all right, are you an OG WriteNow member? What was the name of the channel originally? And what font was the first half of the book written in? All right, so we got this first one. It looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post them here. Let's see, let's give them a. This one will be green. Okay. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, actually. So I'm going to copy and post it. This is what I'm going to do. I changed my mind. Okay, so I'm going to copy and post it there, and then I'll let one of you guys read. So I'll go back and forth with this. In a perfect world, Coffin planned this out in advance.
Oh, I'm going to take a brief interlude. I'll be back in a minute if you're going to do that. Soul, it's up to you. You're like, I got this.
Okay, perfect. So this very first one, all right. Let's see. I should probably turn off my spell check. Grammarly, we do not need you right now. Okay. It's like kind of annoying. Sometimes the format messes with me. Okay. So I think I am all ready. So we got the very first one. Everyone's comments crack me up. Sean is saying, I started writing because my acting teacher was running out of new scripts and asked me to write one-page scenes, which turned into short screenplays into my first feature screenplay. Aw.
Nice.
Having a teacher having a teacher like that who really helped push you, that's amazing. That's absolutely
No, I
incredible.
get that. That's actually why I'm a writer. My history teacher in 6th grade, if it weren't for him, I don't think I would have gotten into writing nearly as much. I even put him in my book's dedication.
Really? Oh, that's actually really cool. That's really cool.
Are you talking about those screenplays?
Yeah, how his acting teacher inspired him. And I just
and your history. Yeah, that's great. And well, didn't you really were inspired by that historical fiction Jack in the title, I think.
Bloody Jack series, yeah. So Bloody Jack, I actually learned to write by studying Bloody Jack, Warriors, and then in the past couple of years, the Earth's Children series. I mean, I've got, like, that. Yeah, I mean, I'm going through school, so I'm getting formal education, but on the side, before all that, no, I learned by reading specific book series, and I think I've read the Bloody Jack series, like the entire series, at least 6 times minimum.
Which must have made it a really good book. And by the way, Mary, not late at all. We're actually just starting on our submissions, so great timing. Doreen said somebody should submit a story idea about 10 grandfathers who like to talk a lot. Thank you so much, writing community. They just want to hear me speak in 10 different grandfather voices and then no longer have a voice. It's okay. Penelope and Soul can speak for me if I lose my voice. John, here you go. Here's the comedic. 10 grandfathers and only 9 rocking chairs. 10 grandfather enter, 1 grandfather leave.
Yeah, you're getting roasted in the comments.
I know. I love it. Love it. Okay. So I am all set up here. Perfect. All right. So I'll start for the first one. I was like, I feel confident. So what is the title? So you guys can see how I've done it. So I basically just copy pasted it from the forum. And I basically took it with the questions and then the ideas. So what is the title for this idea? Riot Ghosts MC series. Go with that. What genre? So this is going to be a contemporary romance. And then the story idea. All right. So each book can follow the members of Riot Ghosts. Has potential to be 20 books. I want the females to need protection and getting saved. Well, the MC moves from illegal to more legal work or morally gray areas. Can use females' professions to move the main character from illegal work to legal. So moving out of the 1% club. First book would be the new president overtaking the order that was going to get the club locked up while finding his backpack. Let's see. First book would be the new president overtaking the order that was going to get the club locked up while finding his backpack. Excellent. And then any fun themes, ideas, or concepts you want to draw inspiration from. I read a few MC books, but I won't use the kink parts. Also, Sons of Anarchy, but less death. Okay, Sons of Anarchy was amazing. Lately, my TikTok feed has been full of backpacks that has put this idea in my head. I need books for those backpacks. Great that's a great call out of being aware of trends and absolutely being aware of trends. Okay, so I think if I understand this idea right, so right now the idea is it's called the Riot Ghosts MC series. MC. I assumed MC meant main character, but maybe it's referencing. What was that?
I think I thought it was too, but I think it's a motorcycle club since the Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, because MC, that's right, because it references Sons of Anarchy. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved Sons of Anarchy, by the way. Sons of Anarchy was so intense. Sons of Anarchy got overlooked by Breaking Bad during those years because Breaking Bad was amazing, but absolutely. So each book can follow the member. So it's kind of like a more romantic Sons of Anarchy type show is the vibe I'm getting from it. I want the females to getting saved. Well, the motorcycle club moves from illegal to more legal work. Yep. Can use female professions to move the club from illegal work. So moving out of the 1% club. First book would be the new president overtaking the order that was going to get the club locked up while finding his backpack. Okay, so let's see. I think I would break this up. Has potential to be 20 books. I think this is the core idea right now. So essentially, it's basically about a female member, more legal, getting it. I want the females to need protection, getting saved while the main motorcycle club moves from illegal to more legal work. Okay, so I was trying to think of like, okay, it's not necessarily a female motorcycle club. It seems like it's maybe kind of a cross between a mix of male motorcycles and maybe it's because they are thinking of this as a romance. So it could be that the majority of the motorcycle club are males. I think if I were to write something like this, I would probably mix up some of the genders, have maybe the majority of the club probably be males, and then have a couple like badass female characters as well. And then I would have their romantic relationships, the romantic part of this, having them be maybe either other types of professions or being ones that either best serve or are obstacles to the motorcycle club becoming more legit. I think that's how I would go about it if I was going to flesh this idea out. But I mean, a romantic Sons of Anarchy, that could potentially be fun. People love this. Would definitely be an anti-hero type character journey. It would definitely be an anti-hero because we always look at these, a motorcycle club doing illegal work means that they're going to probably have some type of history. And if the first book is starting with the new president, then our new president is the hero, or not necessarily, but maybe they're the hero. And it's really this new president. They probably have a dark past, or maybe they are a bad boy, but they often something changed. Yeah. I read a few, but I wasn't using the part. What do you guys think of it? What comes to mind for both of you as you're kind of thinking through this idea? I guess what's like what comes to mind at a first glance?
I loved Sons of Anarchy, so I'm on board. I know that mafia romance is really popular right now, and this seems like it could kind of. I don't read them, so I don't know a lot about them. I assume from the title,
do you guys know what the TikTok trend is with backpacks?
I didn't get that.
Because it's probably a trend. I'm not on TikTok too much as I used to be. I'm just kind of curious. It's probably a trend with backpacks.
I wondered if it was just like muling contraband in backpacks.
Maybe.
Honestly, that's what comes to mind at first thought there.
Yeah. So I mean, it's got popularity.
Or maybe it's like an author thing. Maybe it's an author thing where it's like people are like putting books in the backpacks, or maybe it's a thing like I have an empty bag. Where are my books? Or I could see it as a trend of like, these are my favorite books. They need to go in this backpack. That's like totally a TikTok thing.
We all took it way too literally. Backpacks are a term for the female.
Courtney was like, backpacks are a term for the female writing. Okay. We took it way too literally.
Wah, wah, wah.
Well, you see what? That helps. Thanks, Courtney. Okay.
I think that's hot. I think the idea is hot. Like, I think that it would be like it could be a really
that actually
sexy,
makes it way
sultry.
hotter.
Yeah. And if with the popularity of mafia romance, so you could easily segue into like that kind of demographic, the syndicate crime romance. I think that you got it's kind of a taming the beast idea, where you've got a bunch of like illegal boys running around doing illegal things, and then the women that need protecting, and then they eventually kind of persuade them to go more legit. So you've got kind of a segue from these really illegal activities to the more legitimate, like, I don't know if they're going from like the back of a motorcycle to the boardroom, or like what would the illegal activities be. But I think the emotional draw is the romance.
I mean, I think the intensity of the illegal activities could kind of change, or could kind of change what would probably change the intensity of the story, because like one illegal activity, like doing something like guns, like doing like running guns, is a different type of illegal activity than maybe doing something like drugs. Probably guns seems to always make it a little bit more intense. But I mean,
not
I'm
only
just thinking
that,
of
but
like the illegal stories.
What happens in those events? It's not just, running the guns. It's how are you doing it? Are you like, are they being
the
hidden
obstacles,
in
right?
something? Yeah.
And also, running guns often gets political. Like you had the Irish segue in,
which like a writer can tackle that, but then they have to be aware, right? If I'm going to do something like that, is that going to serve or not serve the story? And if this is if it's like a contemporary romance, then I feel like that the things that the illegal things they should be doing should be things that would provide obstacles to these romantic types relationships. So maybe it should be something with prostitution. Maybe, because then you can do something that you can start off dark, but then do something that speaks to like, oh, why are characters, that is actually a subject that you could do. You could do something easier, just like lighter drugs, or you could do something that's maybe helping convicts get out of prison. I think there's a number of ways to go about it.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, especially if every book follows one. I think I remember that it's one of the MC members and their relationship. So each book could be a different like member and their relation, like their whatever relationship. I don't know how you do the timeline with that, but
and getting say, well, the motorcycle clubs moves from illegal to more legal work. Yeah, so I mean, then that means that the entire club would have to be doing unified behind one illegal thing. Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably have to be one illegal thing, and then they would transition. Because I mean, I think Sons of Anarchy starts out with it's been so long since I've watched the show. They start off with guns?
Yeah, I know that they got into it earlier. It was more like because his dad, I can't remember what the main character's name was, but his dad was more into the freedom aspect and the poetic, loving, that kind of new romantic freedom thing. And then the new guy was more like, let's get it all, let's concentrate more on it becoming a business, and shifted the focus away from that kind of from freedom to capitalism. And but yeah, I think that
taking that ideology there is important, right? So the ideology that was through the leaders were important in that story.
And that created a lot of great conflict for the main character as well, because he had, his relationship with his father, or the memory of his father that he would try to honor, but also the new president and his mom, and and then his relationship with there's just the two of them, I think.
Let's see. So I think if I were to do this as a quick blurb, I'd say Riot Ghosts is a story about a motorcycle club.
Sorry, that was loud.
It's a story about because you want to draw people in with romances, right? Do you say illicit romances? Maybe you can give me a good word here. What would be a good word draw about the romance, about the something romances of a
sordid.
Sordid?
Sordid. Well, no, because
sordid might be too much. I would say, right, as a story about the
romantic romances. I don't
Romantic
know.
romances.
Romantic
Okay, I'll come up.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you could go relationships, right? Because it's a story about the relationships between, right? It's a story about the relationships between between a motorcycle, relationships between the members of a motorcycle club and their backpacks.
We learned a new word today.
What was that?
I said we learned a new word today.
I know, right? All while they are trying to go legit. I think that's the core of it, essentially, right? Because it's more around the relationship, and with like the motorcycle bit, like clearly most of these characters would have backgrounds, they would have a history, so you could totally play into the bad boy stereotype. You like totally play into that. I think that, yeah, I would play into the bad boy stereotype with that type of relationship, and then you would have like different levels. I think that's how I'd go about it. All right, beautiful. So I think that is a good first one. Thank you for that submission. Beautiful. So we got the first one is the Riot Ghosts MC series. All right, and now let's go into idea number 2. Okay, and I think this was one that was submitted twice. So I'm going to skip that and come back to that one. All right, so what do we got?
Absolutely.
Ooh, we got a sci-fi next. Now, this is a question I pose to you. Since we're going to have different stories in different genres, do you think we should rank them or vote when we get to the voting? You think we should vote them based on the genre? We should try to batch them up in genres, or just as a story idea?
Let's just do the story idea, because you said there was what, 10, 12 of these?
Yeah, it looks like we got about
probably not
12
all
now.
going to be in the same genre, and who knows if there's how many is going to be in the same genre.
That's a really good point.
If we have a ton in like one genre, maybe pick one out of that. But like otherwise, yeah, I agree. We've got enough. We can probably just vote. Now I've got to go watch Sons of Anarchy again. I was gonna watch Dexter, but okay.
I loved Sons of Anarchy.
It was so good. It was consistently good. Like it didn't ever really jump the shark.
I was just bummed out that it didn't really get that much attention.
Yeah, and
Sons of Anarchy was like that cult. It was like a cult class. It was like a cult TV show that did enough for numbers, and it went through all 7-8 seasons.
Yeah,
but it never got the same attention that it deserved because of Breaking Bad. But then comparing the two, Breaking Bad was a phenomenal show. And I would say Breaking Bad, from an overall perspective, was just a little better put together. Sons of Anarchy, a couple of the middle seasons kind of roller coaster in terms of value. Okay, so I have the next one. It looks like we got a sci-fi. All right, I'll give it to one of you guys to read through this.
All right, I'm Shamboya for it.
No, just take this one.
Oh no! Yeah, all right, you
I
win by
default. I guess I win. All right. So we have coming up for our second submission. The title for this idea is called Open House, and it is a sci-fi. So the idea is Vivian Royer's idea of success is having just bought a small home in her hometown where she plans to live a quiet life as a writer. But the house isn't small, and she isn't sure who it belongs to when the change happens. A hall that ended at the master bedroom turns a corner, and there's a staircase. Upstairs is a deserted, large lounge area with a fully stocked bar. Vivian doesn't drink, and she's unsure how she feels about this elegant, a very unexpected place. She retreats to her bedroom, but finds a young woman sitting at a vanity brushing her hair. What is happening? And so what concepts do you want to draw inspiration from? A mix of artificial intelligence, time travel, and shape shifting.
Yeah, I was going to say, this definitely sounds like a time travel thing.
Yeah.
It's giving House of Leaves and TARDIS at the same
Okay,
time.
honestly, for some
Very
reason, the first thing that I picture is for anyone familiar with Adventure Time, Clock
I
Bear.
love it. Wait, who did it remind you of?
Clock Bear. When Finn and Jake went to that house and Clock Bear
Yep.
was like, he needed to be rewound and stuff.
Yeah,
That's like the first thing that
I
comes to
totally
mind
get
with
that.
this.
I loved Adventure Time. Yep, totally picked up on that.
I love how like this is like somebody just cut and pasted a bunch of like choose your own adventure
Yeah,
pages together,
almost,
and suddenly you're like flipping through and you're in one and then you're in another, and like it's very randomized. But
this
I wanted to,
kind of feels like a choose your own adventure. It kind of
Yeah,
feels
it
like
does.
this should be like a second person POV, choose your own adventure type framework. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this too. Open house. And so it's a sci-fi. Yeah, I definitely get the choose your adventure type. Why is that? I think because and this just from the framing of the core story, it obviously it all takes place in a single house that's so far. And the way their ideas right now is it kind of takes place from room to room to room, which is a very much choose your adventure type framework. Choose your adventures are fun, by the way. I love choose your adventures. It's my hope to create a choose your adventure something eventually.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've wanted to write a hypertext forever. That would be
what if we wrote a choose your own adventure for NaNoWriMo?
That would be
awesome.
awesome.
Just came to me.
Are you gonna do that? I want to do that too.
That idea just came to me right now in this moment. So whoever submitted this idea, this is all thanks to you. If we do a choose your own adventure.
Everybody writes a choose your own adventure. I really like this idea. I'm trying to figure out like now I'm like, where does the AI come in? Because like, is Vivian really a program in a computer and the AI is just become sentient and it's messing with the program to see how it will react in different situations? Like,
well, it could be because they want to draw it. So it sounds like maybe they want to draw inspiration from AI. So maybe they're trying to figure out like, okay, with this idea, maybe where could AI be? Let's say I know we have in the comments. Let's see. I know Nil was saying it sounds like it might be better to focus. You're talking about the MC. Courtney, I'll come back to your MC comments. But Nil was saying I thought of The Shining.
It's a labyrinth, right?
Could have that like creepy type vibe with it. I like that our protagonist is a writer, so that's a win for me. I love that Vivian is a writer. Let's see. She isn't quite sure who it belongs to when the changes happen. A hall that ended at the master bedroom turns a corner and there's a staircase. Upstairs is deserted with a fully stocked bar. Yeah, I could totally see the Shining vibe because it could potentially like maybe it's not choose your adventure. It could have a horror, could have that like creepy thriller vibe. I could totally pick up on that.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this.
Vivian is a drink and she's unsure how she feels about this elegant but very unexpected space. True, but finds a young woman sitting at a vanity brushing her hair. So this young woman.
What?
Yeah, so I mean, the young woman has to be some type of obstacle antagonist, or maybe it is like maybe the house is AI, or maybe the woman is AI. I mean, it could be that type of like indie thing, like, where she has to. It sounds like she's here for a retreat. Since she's a writer, she's here to write a book. Is kind of my guess. Otherwise, why make them a writer?
It says she just bought a house, so she's retiring to her hometown to be a writer, and then but she wasn't even aware of when she started living in this house. Yeah, it's
this
weird.
Is actually totally a horror setup. Now that I've missed the bought a small house, this is totally a setup for a horror movie. Ex person goes to a small town in the middle of nowhere and buys a house. Strange things happen in the house as they learn more about their identity. This is actually very much a horror setup now that I think about it. But they want it to be a sci-fi. So like they could subvert expectations and maybe like, oh, if it could be maybe the woman's AI. Maybe she's like the first AI being. That could be fun.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with something like this, I think there's a couple of directions that it could go in. And I think that's where we're at, right? Because right now it's interesting, but with the idea and with the mix that they want to do, like they could take it in an AI direction, maybe the house is AI, maybe this woman is AI, or they could do a time travel thing, right? Like maybe the house is changing realities and it keeps like changing, or maybe the woman's a shapeshifter, right? There's a couple of different directions it could go in. I think that really depends on, and because especially I want it to be sci-fi, then and I mean these are all sci-fi concepts.
The shape-shifting is the only thing that I don't see as sci-fi, because
yeah, I was gonna say it's a little bit more fantasy. But I mean, think about Doctor Who. Doctor Who, there's a I mean, so have you seen Doctor Who? But Doctor Who has a shape-shifting
no.
For any sci-fi fan out there, Doctor Who. But there's a couple shape-shifting episodes, but it's like you could use shape-shifting as like a mechanical scientific type thing. It's just more commonly a fantasy type trope.
Well, and you could use in more like conceptually the house itself sounds like it's shape-shifting. So the house could be the AI holographic shapeshifter type.
That would be neat. That would be a really neat concept.
It's a puzzle. It's a psychological puzzle, right? Like
that would be cool. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Actually.
And it needs to be directed by David Lynch. That's all I have to say. I would pay popcorn money for this if David Lynch directs. Yep.
Let's see. So I think if I were to sum this up, a writer retires. A writer retires. A writer buys a house. Let's say a writer. It's like, is retirement important? Small house where she plans to live a quiet life, plans to live a quiet life. Okay, it's not retirement. She just bought a quiet house. So a writer buys a house in a small town to finish writing her books. Vivian, little does a writer, we'll put Vivian Royers, which is actually a great writer's name. I actually do like that as a name. I think that's a great name. Vivian Royers buys a house in a small town to finish writing her book. Little does she know this house has more in store for her than she expected. I think that would be the overall gist. And then depending on what direction they take this, little does she know the AI housekeeper or the time traveling house, and I would say AI or time traveling, whatever they want to draw people in, has more in store for her than she expected. I think that's the framework for it. Or if you take it in like a choose your own adventure, then I would frame it as a choose your own adventure.
Honestly, I could really see this as a choose your own adventure. There's a couple out there, like through Choice of Games, that are kind of like this in a way, and it's really neat.
This one is like a sci-fi horror. Yeah, I would totally play into the horror vibe of this. I think if I was working on this, I'd totally play into the horror vibe. All right, perfect. So I think that is good for that one. Beautiful. Thank you. No, you brought up cool premise. Deciding what the protagonist wants to learn would determine what goes on in each room. If she's trying to let go of past or write or just escape. Yeah, as a writer, you could do so many things. Like maybe each room is like a story that she's trying to figure out.
It's the ultimate procrastination house.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It is the ultimate procrastination. And the writer never actually writes a word of their book the entire thing. But
every writer
basically experience a full story worth 1,000 words.
It's perfect.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I think that right now as an idea, I think that's very early. And I think depending on where the writer wanted to take it, they could take it out with more. But as an idea, it's not enough to do anything with yet. And I think whereas the first one, the motorcycle one, I think that one had a little bit more of a theme and a little bit more fleshed out. The second one could be cool. It just needs more planning. more planning and
Yeah.
strategy.
There's a lot
All
to work
right.
with it too. Yeah.
So let's go into the next one. Ooh. Oh my goodness. I think someone's messing with me. I'm going to do it because I'm cracked up. Oh man. Okay. Okay. This one was a joke one, but I have to do it because I'm so cracked up. I think this is hilarious.
You can only do it if you read it in your grandfather voice.
What is the title for this idea? First Scared Crow. What genre does it fall into? Nonfiction. Definitely not plagiarism. Story idea. There is a crow who gets scared very easily. He is going to market. He must beat the evil Kara Joffman to get there first. Who is powerless without his hoodie, or maybe just slightly colder? Just a corny joke. I'll submit a real one. I was like, I absolutely love it. I think this would be a phenomenal story. And I think the evil Kara Joffman, I think that's a real antagonist. I hope I get a real spoof out of this. This is great. I approve. After the Last Scarecrow is published, I'll be like, all right, how many spoofs can I get out of this story?
Oh no! I thought of something I can't say out loud. Okay, never mind.
You can type it in the private chat. Yeah, Cordy, that one wins hands down. Hilarious. Everyone's gonna want me to include that in the voting. The first Scared Crow. Okay. All right. That does not count. But I'm definitely entertained. Thank you for submitting that. I'm cracking up. Okay. And let's see. On to the next one. Ooh, this one is interesting. Okay, so it looks like so we have a lot more fleshed out for this one. It looks like, Soul, you are in for a good reading experience. All right.
So thrilled.
All right, so the next one, it looks like we're doing a little bit of a short story. Let's go. I was like, okay, I'm realizing that this one I should probably double space it so it doesn't feel like that much.
No.
But I can tell that this one is probably the most fleshed out of the ones we've received so far. Right. And this is the great thing, right? Because story ideas, they could be at any stage, right? So we're accepting story ideas, whether you've came up with it in the spur of the moment this week, or whether you've been thinking of it for 20 years. Right. And I think that's important to call out. Okay. All right. So, and we are all set. So I'll give this to you.
Russian Roulette Hangman. And looks like, yeah, that's just a placeholder title. A short story like The Lottery or something by Edgar Allan Poe. Not familiar with The Lottery, but a little bit with Edgar Allan Poe, so.
I'll tell you the lottery story after.
Okay. I don't have much time to write. I'm trying to work on short stories like those mentioned. Something interesting and quick. Maybe there's a twist, but it doesn't have to be crazy. Maybe there's a moral, but that's not the focus. I thought it would be interesting to have a hangman's gallows with 6 nooses that hang down. Then a hangman pulls the lever, but only one person actually drops to their death. The selection is random. Maybe if someone survives 5 times, they are set free. I chose 6 for the group and 5 for the times to survive, same as Russian Roulette. I was thinking of how this idea could work as a short story. One direction for the story is to have it so there's always 6 people every time the lever is pulled. After someone dies, they are replaced. The odds never improve. This This version could be written from the third person point of view. The twist would be that the winner has to be the hangman for the next 6 people, or pick the next 6 people from a crowd that is watching and cheering. This version would show that death really isn't escapable. Another direction would be to make it so there's a set group of 6 people, but every time someone dies, they are not replaced. The group gets smaller and the odds go up. You could tell the story from the first person perspective of the people in the lineup. However, the perspective keeps changing because the person dies. So it goes down the line, person 1, 2, 3, etc. Then when you get to the last person's perspective, we gradually learn that this person stakes to lose their family and gradually increasing hope of surviving. In the end, the person, the reader, hopes to live, actually dies, and the winner is an unredeemable criminal, and this version would show how death is indiscriminate and affects everyone. Good or bad, I don't think the people in the lineup should all be criminals. Maybe some are and some are random. I don't think there should be much explanation about the ritual, how people got there and why it's done. Kind of how the movie Cube is about a group of people in a deadly maze, but is more about their interaction. I'm sorry, I didn't know exactly what you were looking for with Pitch Wars. I'm sorry if this is too long. I didn't know how to explain out. So yeah.
No, that was perfect. I'll probably try to write a 5-page guillotine.
Yeah, into summer.
Yeah, I think that's just a current focus. Yeah, so they were kind of going into a little bit more recommendation, and then they also said at the end, would you recommend to emphasize the commentary / moral of death more, or change the twist to make a different story stronger? Message. Thank you for any feedback right now, community.
See, any fun themes? Sorry, this is a darker theme. Don't think I'm morbid because it's the first thing I shared. Jared knows I usually like easy fantasy like Alice in Wonderland that some of my other writings focus on. With Edgar Allan Poe, I think I'm drawn more to the tension of stories like Cask of Ammon. Yeah, I cannot pronounce that. I think I like it more for the tension.
Amontillado.
Okay, thank you. More for the tension, wondering where the story is going as they go deeper in the wine cellar, than just the fact that it has a macabre twist. So I might also apply this concept to a general fantasy world in the future where maybe it's done by the leaders to maintain order, but also show mercy at the same time.
Interesting. So I think what I like about this is they have this idea very fleshed out. They have like the core idea fleshed out, which is awesome, right? I think it's clear that it's something to do with a hangman's noose. Yeah, there's obviously 6 people, but then the way they want to go about the story is kind of what they're thinking through. What did you guys think about before I dive into it?
I really like the moral of death is indiscriminate and it is inevitable. I was kind of playing around with something a little bit like that today, and it's a neat concept. Yeah, it can be a little morbid, but it is also one of the most interesting out there because death is the same for everyone. It's just the end, but there's so many ways that it can be interpreted.
I think that definitely you could go with a more of an Edgar Allan Poe creepy suspense, kind of a moral of the story vibe. Like with Cask of Amontillado has that build up, and then the Mask of the Red Death with death being indiscriminate. But also it gave me Squid Game vibes. Like
okay, I could see that, like that Squid Game ones a little bit. I want to say that I think the lottery. So if it's the story I'm thinking of, I think it was a short story I read a long time ago, where I think the lottery it's a short story where it's framed where it's a small village and they're kind of talking through the first half of the short story of like picking. Everyone pulls like I think they do a twig system. It's either a twig or a paper system where everyone pulls one and it slowly narrows down. And it's framed where like, okay, the winner of the lottery is going to get something really great, but it's very dark. And the winner of the lottery, I think, gets stoned to death. And it's like a ritual. It's like some type of ritual type thing, but it's framed where it's very light, and then it gets darker and darker each throughout the story. And then the end, the winner is I forgot who the winner was, but I think they get stoned to death. I'm pretty sure that's how it ends. If it's the one I'm thinking of.
there's an element of like the ritual sacrifice, like in the lottery, you brought that up, and just like the people picking the maiden to go out and get eaten by the the dragon or whatever, even though that's like not exactly what's happening. There's this concept of like you have to give some youth up or somebody up to mortality to for it's ancient, right? Like you gotta sacrifice so that the crops will grow or that the rains will fall or whatever. So there's that kind of very primal mythological concept behind stories like this, which definitely I like even though like the author was like concerned about the macabre nature of it, I say lean into it.
I would lean into it as well, because I mean clearly the idea of a hangman's gallows, like that's the idea in itself is ultra macabre. So like play into the idea. I think that it sounds like what they're trying to figure out is like how to go about the idea is really the strategy or the approach. But I think the idea is cool. It gave me a very almost like dark folklore type vibe almost. It definitely got a dark folklore type vibe from it. And I mean, it's a short story. So I think they're trying to determine like what's the character journey and how do they go about it intentionally. I think doing the things with death and how the odds never improve, that's interesting. I think the way you would set this up is I think it should be the same 6 people. Or at least I'm asking myself if I were to work on this, I think I would do the same 6 people personally. And so that way I could build up some interest from the reader in the 6 people as they slowly get killed off.
Yeah.
I think that would be...
Yeah, there's stories out there. We've got the one character you're paying attention to, but somehow for something like this, having multiple characters that you actually like in some way, or at least know, I feel like it would be a lot stronger.
What if the hangman was death? And you did it as like if you went darker, like what if the hangman was death and each person had like the chance, like there had to be a way that each person could potentially get out of the hangman's noose. So that way you think that from the beginning, okay, they could possibly survive. So then you're kind of setting up these stakes up until our protagonist, they're basically the last one.
That puts it way into a more classic interpretation pose area, which I like that. I like that kind of playing chess with death. That's 7 Seals, right? So like that concept of trying your chances. I don't know. I really like it, and I like that direction with it, especially because I think that it takes it to that more. You get to look at everybody, like you could even do like their backstory and how they got there and what strategy they take, or they plead their case. This is why you should
Edgar Allan Poe type. I definitely go with like each of them are there for maybe a specific type of sin, or they're there for a different reason. You could also explore the 7 sins with it. That'd be another way to go about it. Yeah, I think I definitely got that with the kind of like the Edgar Allan Poe. It's kind of like that creepy, or it could be like more of a ghost story. Like maybe all of them are dead already, right? But you think that they're alive, and then you figure out like, okay, what's the twist? What is the twist at the end of it? I think it's figuring out what is the twist. Like you could go much more literal. Like it's a town, like the lottery is a much more literal approach, right? Where it's a lottery, they're being sacrificed and only maybe hopefully one person will survive. Or you go a much more like ghost story type approach with an Edgar Allan Poe type. It's interesting because they're 2 very different styles of stories and either could work. Yeah.
Freaking nuts.
Yeah, so I think both of those, I think either of them could be fun. Kind of how the movie Cube is about a group of people in a deadly maze, but it's more about their interactions. The Cube was actually a really interesting indie movie, by the way. Have either of you guys seen that?
I have not. I was just going to ask, is it worth watching?
If you like indie horror movies.
Yay! Okay, so I'll be watching that tonight.
It kind of has the vibe of like the original Saw, the first Saw, without it being like, yeah. I mean, if you like indie horror movies with a twist, it's fun. It's very low budget. They made 3 of them. I think they're all on Netflix or something like that. But it's kind of like that indie horror movie with a twist, which was interesting.
I like that.
Let's see. I will probably yeah, so I think overall it's fun. I actually like the morbid dark theme of it, and I think you should definitely play into it.
Oh yeah.
And I think you get to decide on, do you make it more of a literal thing, or do you make it more of a like more supernatural creepy type thing? And I think that's where you get to have fun with it. All right. And then what was the story about? So it's called Open House.
No, that was a previous one.
Oh, no. I was like, no, that's right. I went too far back. I was like, Russian roulette. I was like, wait, that did not sound right. Russian Roulette Hangman.
I think that's a good title, to be honest.
I actually think that's a good title as well. But I am of the mindset, always come up with the placeholder title, whether it's great or whether it sucks. I think there should always be a title, because you need to know how to refer to the story by.
I kind of was playing with that, and I came up with Hangman's Roulette.
Ooh,
yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I just Russian a little bit more condensed.
Roulette. What the original one was? What, Russian Roulette Hangman?
Yep.
Russian Roulette Hangman, and you came up with what, Hangman's Roulette?
Hangman's Roulette, yeah. If you just wanted to condense it a bit.
Yeah, because I think most people know what a roulette is. No, people know what a roulette table is, at least. Hangman's Roulette, and by saying hangman's, we know it's death, and roulette means it's some type of death game. So I think this would Russian Roulette and if we think about it, even though Russian Roulette is life or death, it's technically a game. It's like a life or death game, and I think that would actually I think it does play into the whole like death and the sins type thing by like the nature of Russian roulette. Especially so, but that's just kind of what comes to me. So I would say Hangman's Roulette is a we'll put it as a supernatural story about 6 individuals at the hangman's noose as they try to get as they await their deaths or try to get free. So I think that's how I would frame that one. Yeah, what do you guys think? I think that works.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, beautiful. So that was another great one. And let me pull up the next one. All right. So I'm like placing all these on another document so I can make sure I have them all condensed. Awesome. So I think so far we have 3 very distinct type of stories. So we went from contemporary romance to sci-fi to kind of like a little like horror, maybe supernatural horror, maybe. All right, and let's see what we got for the next one. So we got paranormal fantasy fiction. Ooh, excellent. All right, so we got another one. And then Penelope, I think you froze up, by the way. BT dubs.
Am I back yet?
Nope.
I'm going to hit the refresh button.
All right, perfect. So I got the next one all set up. All right, there you go. Much, much better. Okay, so I got the next one set up. I'm going to go straight into it. So this one is, what is the title for this idea? Unleashing the Hidden Spark. This is a paranormal fantasy fiction. All right, And then the pitch is Ed Sparks, a bartender and stripper working to pay for college, stumbles into a supernatural world after witnessing a vampire attack. Ridiculed and disbelieved, Ed becomes a reluctant investigator, eventually confronting the vampire and triggering his latent Fey ancestry, leading to a dangerous transformation. Ed's new volatile powers attract supernatural beings and relentless hunters. He must navigate betrayals and shifting alliances to survive. Ed struggles to control his abilities and maintain his humanity while facing constant danger and being pursued by those who see him as a threat. Let's see. And then summary, Ed grew up in foster, and then it looks like we get backstory to Ed. Let's see. Ed Sparks grew up in foster care, works as a bartender. Okay, I think it just copied it for some reason. And then the fun themes, ideas, or concepts is a reluctant investigator and hidden magical community.
I'm already on board because I'm already on board with this kind of being really neat because the hidden magical community thing. So
yeah, I really like it.
I was wondering how much money I would lose on a Fey stripper. Like it would be
Fey stripper, you're like just my type of stripper. Those Fays and their wings.
Yeah, and just and now he's a vampire as well. Hello.
Yeah, like we got vampire and Fey. Do we see many worlds where vampires and Fays and fairies cross?
Asterion from Baldur's Gate 3 is the hottest thing since sliced bread. But he's a Fey vampire, I think. And yeah, he's amazing. So I want to see more like that, especially if they're stripping.
Well, it doesn't actually say whether or not he becomes a vampire. It just says that he triggers his Fey ancestry, which makes me think it makes me think that it's Fey versus vampire.
Okay, that's cool.
That's a very interesting conflict between two races. I don't know if I've seen a conflict like that between fairies and vampires. Have you?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting.
That's fantasy and horror, right? Which you don't
fairies and vampires. Yeah, I mean that would definitely be that would be a fantasy horror.
I like it. You don't see that. Yeah, it's very novel.
I mean, what category do you consider vampires? You consider vampires
horror? I do.
Fantasy or horror? Supernatural.
Yeah, so I mean, this would probably be a supernatural fantasy. I mean, they said this is paranormal fantasy, so this they're aware of what genre they're in. Because it's paranormal fantasy. Yep. Yeah, I love this. I think this is a really cool idea, and you can tell. I think they already have the core story fleshed out. I think if I was going to,
I will admit it does sound like a bit much meshed together, but then again, it's just this. It's not like the actual story. So just this, not enough for at least for myself to really see how everything fits together, but then again, it's just this. So
and you're thinking there's not enough concepts or themes in it, or there's too much, because you said not enough but then too much.
It's kind of both. It just feels like there's a lot going on, which is nice, but it's like there's not. It's like I don't know. It's like there's something missing. Like there's some connection that's not being said that maybe I'm missing.
All right, so let's think through what this core story is. So the normal world, Ed the bartender witnesses vampire instant, goes to the supernatural world. Ridiculed, he becomes an investigator. Through his investigative journey, he becomes a Fey and unlocks his Fey powers. Attracts supernatural beings, and he must navigate betrayals. So by becoming a Fey in a world full of vampires, he now... I think if it's clear that he's the only Fey, I think if you make it Fey versus a world of vampires, I think you can actually make it more of an underdog type character arc.
Yeah.
Ed struggles to control his abilities and maintain his humanity while facing constant danger and being pursued by those who see him as a threat.
Have you guys seen Dresden Files or read those? They might have Because isn't he kind of a paranormal investigator in that?
I think he is a little bit, actually. Yeah.
I think it's kind of got it's giving Dresden Files a bit too, which could be like this. Sounds like maybe the first part, the first book, and then there could be a series of books afterwards where there's a bunch of investigations.
Yeah, especially because he wants to play in. They want to play into the reluctant investigator portion of Ed Sparks. So it kind of makes me think. I mean, they make Ed Sparks a bartender, so Ed Sparks is clearly knows how to hold himself with people. So Ed Sparks probably is. He's probably a charismatic investigator of type. He investigates because he isn't believed, and through his journey he becomes a fae. Yeah, I think I would play into the fae versus vampire. I think that I would play into that. I would play into. I think we don't get enough about the world, at least just from this core story, right? So we know we got fairies and
That's
vampires.
what I'm missing then. It's just
I
there's
think
not
right
enough.
now, well, I think this one focuses on the character journey. This focuses a little bit on the hero journey, but we get nothing about the world. And I think that's what this current idea is missing, because vampires, a paranormal world, vampires can be any number of different worlds. So then the question I ask is does this vampire world, is this only vampires? Is this only vampires and fairies? Do we also have werewolves? Do we have witches? Do we have, what are these other supernatural elements? Does this take place in the real world? And it's the real world, but we got like the True Blood where it's like it happens underneath, or is it a whole different type of world? So I think what the pitch right now is missing, I think it just further fleshing out the world itself, because I think we're intrigued by the character journey, but readers have to know what type of world they want to explore, and that will determine what level of paranormal world that it is. And I think that's what is the thing to figure out right now. But I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities, right? Mass Toaster is saying, would love to see how the different tropes work out, because there's a lot of really interesting opportunities here. Yeah, so I would say Unleashing the Inner Spark is a paranormal fantasy fiction where Ed Sparks investigates investigates a series of vampiric incidents while unlocking his fae ancestry and becoming and getting stuck or getting trapped in the middle of a war. I think that would be the way I'd frame that, in the middle of like a decade-long war, an era-long war. I think that's the way that I would go about that. Do you two think that seems about accurate with where they're going at for?
Yeah, at the very least, and mainly that last part, it leads to something similar.
Because then I think this gives it a little bit more specific conflict. I think that's why. But I think that's what they're going for with the fae versus vampire thing. It kind of feels like that's because So that's what I have for that one. Let's see. Perfect. All right. Onwards and upwards. And then we got the next one. All right. So that was paranormal fantasy. We've had some really interesting submissions so far. All right. And let me pull up. So I got, what is next? So it looks like we have, we're going pure fantasy this time. I think this one might actually be right up your alley, Penelope.
I like fantasy. I like lots of things. I like fantasy.
This one. I think this is interesting. We're going in a completely different direction now than from our past, because these last couple ones have been dark.
Sharp left-hand turn, anyone?
Okay. All right, so this next one, I am already perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, this one's mine.
I loved this movie as a child.
I keep
like, there
forgetting
actually is a
there's
movie
a
called
freaking
The Last
movie.
Unicorn, right?
This is actually loosely based off a children's book that I had as a kid that I just adored.
Yeah, there is it the one that the movie is made off of, or is it different?
I don't know. I've never seen that movie, honestly.
Yeah, there is a movie called The
It's
Last
so
Unicorn, right?
wonderful.
Oh yeah, no, there's an old movie called The Last Unicorn. Like, I know the general premise of it. Like, I've seen like enough memes and stuff online to kind of understand a little bit about it.
Yes.
But I personally never watched it. The book that I had was like, well, just read this and you'll get an idea.
Okay. I let me get my fairy godmother voice on.
Okay.
What is the title for this idea? The Last Unicorn. What genre does it seem like this idea falls into? Fantasy adventure. I love a good adventure story. Unicorns have been going extinct for some time because of their feud with dragons. Finally, when only a few are left, a young unicorn is hidden away. Years passed until she's older and becomes restless of the space she has been living in. She wants to explore to find the rest of her kind, but knows the dangers of running into dragons is too great. She eventually gets restless enough to leave, but learns she is one of the last unicorns in the world, and that no one has seen another one in some time. She travels alone, trying to find them, but keeping an eye out for dragons. She runs into trouble along the way that let her see the state of the world, learning to use her magic for the first time, and following tales that could maybe lead her to other unicorns. She eventually does run into dragons, but realizes they are dying out too. She reluctantly decides to help a young dragon, as she knows what it's like to be alone and without her own kind. She ends up helping him find his way home, but he stays with her and helps her find her own kind. Eventually, she finds the other unicorns, who are shocked to see one of their own willingly being friends with a dragon, as their feud went centuries and generations deep. This is loosely based off of an old kid's book, The Last Unicorn, but greatly expanded. I wanted to explore the themes of friendship, healing, generational trauma, how change is necessary and good, and how to change your own views for the better.
Well, I love it. What was there dragons in the original one?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, then it's
Unicorns
not the movie doesn't have dragons in it. It has a giant red bull.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah. It's kind of the same premise, like she's the last of her kind, obviously. They're the last, but yeah, it's way more. You've got way more world building and different adventures and dragons, which is
I wonder with this type of thing is, so would you see this as a book? Is this kind of what you're thinking of as a book?
Oh yeah, and I've already started writing this.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Beautiful. So you've already,
I can't wait to read
beautiful. I know, like I absolutely love the story. When you like, so whenever it gets to that published stage, do you market it as loosely based off The Last Unicorn?
I might. I will have to find a copy of it.
Base. You could cater to the fan base. You'd have to look into copyrights. You'd have to look into copyright specifically.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm a little worried about. Just because, I mean,
but there's a
lot more to this.
But there's a reason that big companies focus on franchises, because this has a pre-existing franchise. I would actually look into copyrights and see if that was something that you could do, like a retelling or reimagining or something to that extent.
Yeah, that's definitely worth a shot. Didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, like it's been a while since The Last Unicorn came out. So, I mean, if it's over 50, when did it come out? Was that 30 years ago?
I have no idea.
Or the book?
Let's see. The Last Unicorn is IMDb places the movie at 1982.
Yeah, but this isn't based off that, though. Here it is.
Peter Beagle.
Wow, I don't believe that was the same one, but it's okay. So I guess the book I was thinking of is The Baby Unicorn. I could have sworn it was called The Last Unicorn because it's kind of about what it was. It was published in 87.
Okay. So that's what, 97, 07, 17, 27. So it's approaching about 40 years almost. So, but I mean, maybe it's not based on it entirely if it's a different story. So, I mean, it could go either way. Unicorns.
I mean, the basic premise is there, a unicorn being
Mhm.
hidden away, and she eventually gets out and runs into a dragon and ends up having to find her family. So, I mean, that's all there. That is
Yeah, and I
all
mean,
in the books.
That's all you said, all in the original.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just,
Yeah, and I mean, I can already tell
there's
the
whole
core character journey is here. The core hero's
Okay.
journey is here already. Like we definitely have the core hero's journey. Let's see. So this is based but on explore themes.
Okay,
so
I really want to say this for Nil. This is not a fan fiction. This is not a fan fiction. This is not the same character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, he's right though.
Yeah, so this is essentially a retelling. Yeah, it's not a fan fiction. You would have to go on this based on this story, depending on how closely it is to the source material. Which I think, because it sounds like there's a lot of core elements and it's a little bit of a retelling, I think the copyright approach would be interesting, and it's potentially could be something that could be done very cheaply, because it's the franchise is approaching about 40 years.
Yeah, okay, so I guess when I get like this written, I'll kind of like contact like the publisher that it came through and kind of like see what they think. So
yeah, I think that would be a good strategy, because what it does is it brings attention to your thing, but then it can also bring attention to the original one as well. If you play into a pre-existing fan base, there is a reason that Hollywood likes to pick books instead of coming up with original material, because there is a pre-existing fan base. But yeah, overall, I love the story. I've never seen The Last Unicorn, but from a pure story, we have a very clear hero's journey. I think the question I would pose is, how is your story, or how are you going to tackle your story differently than the original source?
I will say in the kids book that I had, there was no journey. I mean, there was, but it was made for like 4-year-olds.
Okay.
So it was definitely a kid's book. This is more of a young adult book that I'm kind of planning. No, she actually sees what humans have done to the world, how it wasn't just the dragons that contributed to the unicorns disappearing. Humans are behind all of that, but they're also suffering too. So she actually gets to see that it's not just her world that's changing, it's theirs too, and the dragons, and just everything's changing. Just everything is changing, and it's difficult to accept that, but you have to accept it, because you can't change, or I guess stop change.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely really love the themes. And I think Neil had a really interesting call out. You're like, I see, but why not just make your own species instead of unicorn? So something to think about is, if you don't want to deal with the copyright, you could always just adjust the core story to make it more your own, and then do it less of a based on it, and do it as an original story, if you don't want to deal with the whole copyright portion of it. Right? Like, you could still do a thing with unicorns and dragons and it still be your own thing. You would just have to think through what are elements that the core story is known for, and then what elements are you going to do really differently.
Yeah,
I think that'd be something. You could go either route. It really just depends I think it would depend on how the story progresses, and then how similar it is to the original source material.
It seems to me like you've got kind of a writer prompt idea from the original book, which was very, like you said,
the best way to say it.
Yeah, it's just it's like about a baby dragon and a baby unicorn hanging out. So you've taken that little concept and you've turned it into an entire hero's journey in the world,
which I absolutely love. I think that's super cool. Yeah, I'm all for dragons. I don't know very much about unicorns, but I think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah,
honestly, I love unicorns. I grew up on unicorns. I was obsessed with them, so definitely my thing.
Oh,
I absolutely love awesome. That. And like I said, I love The Last which I think, so The Last Unicorn, the original book, was written in 1968. And then the movie
Okay.
came out in the 80s. And then this book, The Baby Unicorn, came out in 87. So like you've already got kind of
the original
a
source materials is technically it's public domain. Then the original source material is public domain. You'd have to look into if the author or the family of the author, if the author is no longer with us, that whoever owns the rights to it, if they extended the copyright and specifically what the copyright protects. With copyright challenges, big companies like Disney and Marvel, like they will copyright all 1,000 little different elements of their things. Whereas smaller ones, they'll just copy, like you can only copyright like a core story idea, because then it's like, well, what if someone writes a story about a unicorn? Well, you can't copyright unicorns, can't copyright dragons, because that's considered genre and like public domain. So there's a lot of interesting minutia there.
I think you've really expanded it out
without having even without knowing the core. It does feel like you've expanded it.
Like it feels like almost
way overboard.
Yeah, of course. Chat soul. Yeah, it's a really cute idea. I like the idea of like going through a world that is dramatically changing and finding solace in a companion. Because I one of the first things that really impressed me about your writing was your ability to write about different relationships with people. So I'd really like to see that develop in the story, because I know you'll do a good job of it.
LeMay brought up a good point. The author does not own the rights to The Last Unicorn. I guess for a point of clarity, if it was done through a publishing house, then the publishing house probably owns the rights.
Yeah, I just looked, and The Baby Unicorn, which this is loosely based off of, I guess prompted from, is through Scholastic.
Oh,
okay. That's something good to know. But then I think of something like Lord of the Rings. The family, I'm pretty sure the family retains the rights to
Tolkien. Yeah, they do.
Universe, right? Even though they publish through publishing houses, right? So I think that's just something like rights are determined during the contractual process and during like with agents and all that stuff. So it could be either or. But that sounds like maybe that could be something to know. Thanks for sharing that, LeMay.
Yeah, this doesn't actually have anything to do with The Last Unicorn. This is The Baby Unicorn. So that's
I cannot believe I forgot the name like that.
Yeah, you really should change it.
Yeah, right. And then you won't even have to deal with that.
But
I mean, like The Lost Unicorn, because that's kind of what
I like that.
Just call it the last Baby Unicorn.
Yeah, there you go. Just make everybody just trigger them all.
The last Baby Unicorn and the dragon are besties for life. There you go.
Yeah. I like The Lost Unicorn. I think that works. That gives it that sense, that element of aloneness that it would have too. Okay, I'm done talking.
Let's see. And so since this is your story, how would you sum it up in a sentence? I'm thinking
unicorn. See, I'd say
be right back.
A young unicorn separated from her family must travel and make an unusual connection to find her way home, or something along those lines.
Must travel through a world full of dragons and make their way home.
Not full of dragons, because because in this story there are very few of them left.
Oh, in a world where dragons
in a world
are
that is just different.
What was that?
In a world that's basically different. It's like nothing she knew. I'm also kind of playing off the whole they live a lot longer. So what might be a year to us is like a decade to them or something.
Which that could be fun, because then you're playing into the longevity of these mythical creatures as a theme and a trope. All right, beautiful. So I think that was once again a great submission, Soul. Thank you for that. And let's move right along to the next one. So what do I got next? I got. Let's see. We got another fantasy subgenre. We got fantasy romance now. Ooh. Fantasy romance. Fun. All right. So let's see. So I think so that actually JK. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is so I can just speed up the process a little bit. Instead of me copying pasting it, I'm just going to pull up the thing itself. I'm going to pull up the submission form itself.
Yeah.
And I think that'll speed it because I want to make sure we can get through everybody's. But so far we have, let's see how many. So we have, I think there's about 12, which means I think I'm going to post up the first 4. So, okay. So I think for voting purposes to narrow them down. So I'm going to pull up the YouTube chat. So if you want to vote, we're going to do the voting through YouTube. And let's see. So I think we'll narrow down the 12 to a final 4. And I think that's going to be the best way to put it. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Do that.
And I think with the YouTube poll option, it only lets me, I think, do 4 at a time.
So we could do the first 4.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah. So it lets me, what was your favorite story?
I want to see this.
4.
Perfect.
Perfect. Because I think we've done what, 4 or 5?
4.
If you count the last crow scared, I think it's 5.
Oh man.
We're not, are we?
I know I won't count that. So we can make sure people get real stories. If there's space at the end, I'll include it. Because then what'll happen is people will vote for that one because it's just funny. And I don't want to take away from the real ones here. The last crow. Oh my god. The last crow travels through a market as they must battle against the evil Carrot Joffman. Let's see, is that romance? So we had Riot Ghosts, we had Open House, which was the sci-fi AI time travel. And then Riot Ghosts was romance, motorcycle, or MC. And then we had Russian Roulette Hangman. Hangman is the supernatural. Russian Roulette Hangman. And then we had, so no, yeah, we did have 5 years was the 5th one. So then we had Hidden, we had the vampire one. Hidden Spark, which was paranormal, normal, vampire. Okay, perfect. So I've just started the poll. So we have 4 so far. I just started it in the YouTube chat. Vote for your favorite of the 4 so far. So your story will get added on the next batch. All right. So far we've thrown up the first 4. Vote for your favorite stories so far. So we have Riot Ghosts, Open House, Russian Roulette Hangman, and Hidden Spark. And just by the way, so for those of you who submitted a story idea, let's just vote on which stories seem like they could be fleshed out or which ones would you want to see, right? And also recognizing that these stories are at different stages of the development process. Okay, so let's hop right into the next one. All right, and I'm going to pull up the screen. Perfect. There's that. So Cursebreakers. Let's see. Is it? Yeah, it's your turn, Sol, right?
Looks like it. Woo. All right. So Cursebreakers, a fantasy subgenre romance. 2 best friends, Holland and Rentheon, are on the run after Holland, a librarian in training, accidentally absorbs an ancient reference tome he shouldn't have found. The words from the book are gone. And Holland can now recite it as if he'd written it. Caught by the librarian in charge, Hall agrees to an extraction spell to get the words back into the tome. But Hall and Ren run and fight when they learn the spell to extract the words out. Holland is evasive, dangerous, and could result in his death. Hall wants to regurgitate the words of the tome into another tome to get them out of him. The words Hall has in him are powerful and ancient and begin to try and gain power through Hall. They begin a journey to investigate a spell from the tome inside him, believing the elders may have hid information away from the population that could help eradicate curses the town is dealing with. Curses run rampant and spread easily. The people rely on the guilds to keep the deadlier curses at bay. Ren and Hall come up against cursed people as they navigate life in hiding while learning the old ways. Disagreement starts between the two when one wants to try to use the spell, and the others believe the elders hid it because it's too dangerous. Eventually, they use the spell to help a villager find someone, and Hall gets trapped in the sword they're using as a conduit. The curse is broken, but now Ren is on a more important mission to get Holland out of the sword. Get his bestie back at any cost. Anyone holding the now very powerful sword can communicate with Holland. Trials and tests ensue as Ren tries to keep the truth secret, but news of the curse being broken and not just contained spreads fast. Everyone wants the sword. More trials and tests as Ren is very powerful now, and Hall wants Ren to keep breaking curses, keep helping others from breaking various curses with the sword, while hopeless to help his friend and hopeless to avoid falling for him. Eventually, Hall is out of the sword. They're expressing their feelings for each other, but when Hall can't express feelings, a curse he took on earlier, we learn he has not broken any curses. He has just absorbed them into himself like he did the words from the tome. The sword is just a sword now. Hall is under a very different, conflicting curse and is dying. Ren, with no other choice, decides to take Hall back to the guild and must rely on someone, the librarian, to help them. Betrayal ensues, but with a backup plan, they get to the hidden empty tome, and somehow the two of them use knowledge they learned on their journey to reflect the curses and words away from Hall, including his power of absorption, who transfers his power of absorption, curses, and words into the original tome. As a powerless librarian, Hall can interact with the tome's power without becoming absorbed by it. Now they take the tome with him through the towns and break the curses with it. Eventually, the book is kind of like a Pandora's box. Power-hungry people want it. They realize they were using the sword wrong. Conduits need the favor of the caster. Librarians have control over books and can wield power with them. Ren was always more attuned to the sword. Sentient weapon trope. Librarians with reading/absorbing information powers. Curses may include vampirism, were creatures, but also some fun and heartbreaking ones too. Power, but at what cost? And friends to lovers.
Ooh. That's a very
I want to read this, and it's not even out there.
I was like, I want to read it too. But you say, I think what works about this is the plot is fleshed out already. They have a clear idea of what the plot is, right? So we can tell that the writers already developed like the core story. So because we know what type of story we're getting, that tells us like, okay, this is an intrigue factor already. Yeah, fantasy romance. Cursebreakers. It's a good name. I think it's a good name for fantasy romance called Cursebreakers. Yeah, and I think the thing with like between the curses and I think the trap sword, I think there's a lot of fantasy tropes here, a lot of fantasy conventions that work. Hole and Ren. And they said they wanted to do this as like a sub romance, so Hole and Ren.
So yeah, it sounded like later on, after he's out of the sword, that's when it seems to come out.
Become more. And they also said they wanted to do it as a romance, friends to lovers. So Holland and Rentheon, although I can't assume, it sounds like they're both masculine names, right? Holland and Rentheon. So then is it LGBT if it's two guys? That's just something that comes to mind. If there's a romance vibe, if there's a romance aspect to it, I think that's interesting. And then that would be a whole nother aspect to be able to market to if it's friends to lovers type dynamic. Yeah, because eventually they're expressing their feelings for each other. Yeah, eventually the book's kind of like yeah, and I mean, I think the themes and the concepts are really interesting. I think that's really, really fun.
The whole
I think
Pandora's box though is really neat. I haven't seen that
I
very
love,
often personally.
especially in the fantasy genre. I don't always see Pandora's box in fantasy. Pandora's box tends to be more Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Curses may include vampirism, war creatures, but also some fun and heartbreaking ones too.
I
Yeah,
know
so
sorry.
no, what were you gonna say? Go for it.
My favorite thing is the conduit needs the favor of the caster. That
Mm-hmm.
sort of reminds me of the wands in Harry Potter. The
Mm-hmm.
wand chooses the wizard kind of thing. It was true with them, and the
Mm-hmm.
wand would always listen to its user, provided they knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of gives me that sort of vibe, and that's always a really interesting kind of thing because it's like the sword is sentient, but it's also the conduit, so it's like it's working with them, but it's not kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think if we think about what this journey is, right? So we have best friends in the beginning in a normal world, librarians in training. They deal with curses, and one of them gets trapped in the sword. The journey throughout the second half, or throughout the second act, is them learning to rely on the curses and rely on the magic of the world and dealing with the obstacles to get them back out of the sword, learn how to gain power through whatever their conduits are. And then they use their learnings to, who's the bad guy? Is there a real antagonist? Or is it more the world? Power hungry,
It
conflicted.
almost sounds like
It
the
almost kind of seems
antagonist
like the
might be the
guild.
powers.
What was that?
It sounds like the antagonist might actually be his powers because they sound like they're
Yeah.
turning.
I was gonna say
Or maybe
curses.
become evil.
Sound like the antagonist.
It kind of makes me think that what's his face becomes evil when, or could become evil when he gets out of the sword, or maybe the guild's evil, or yeah, I think that's the only thing is I'm not sure who the antagonist is, but the story itself is very interesting. I think the core story sounds like a lot of fun.
I think they kind of sound like they're getting in their own way enough.
What was that?
No, it's
I
just
mean,
the comedy of errors. Like they keep screwing themselves over.
I mean, yeah, it could be one of those things, right? Where it's kind of like, I think that's like a man versus self type dilemma where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're our own worst enemy. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm kind of
Whereas,
getting
like,
that
if they
vibe.
had done nothing, everything would have been fine. But
But
because
it's
they explore the curse, but it's the world itself is interesting. It feels like there's a
Mhm.
lot to be explored in the world with the curses and some of these and the Pandora's box. Like the themes that they want to explore makes it feel like I want to interact with the world.
Yeah. It's a really cute idea that's been it's got a lot of expansion in it already.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a fun romp, a fun romantic romp too. Like depending on if you took it in a comedic kind of a romantic comedic area or you
Mhm.
I mean like I like the idea of like
yeah.
some heartbreaking curses. Like you've got all these like little mini short stories at the end where they just go around like
Yeah.
dealing with all the stuff they've caused.
Yeah.
Like
I think if you
reading
play into
from
the
the book.
romance aspect of it, maybe
Yeah.
I'll like the curses with like the love aspect of the curses and maybe seeing how it affects other people. I think that could be a
Mhm.
lot of fun. You could totally
Yeah.
make this like very lighthearted, a very
Mhm.
like lighthearted fantasy romance adventure.
I think that would be really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like I'm not
Beautiful.
being condescending. I love cute. So
No, yeah, I think
cute
that was
fan
really, really
like
good.
The Mummy was a cute adventure romance, right? With Brendan Fraser and
Mhm.
Rachel Weisz. Like that kind of
Mhm.
cute
Yeah, I
fantasy.
think that's the direction I take it in as well.
Mhm.
All right, beautiful. So what we'll do is we'll move right on to the next one. And let me take a quick pause to do a quick ad because if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Welcome to the Right Now community. You found us on our story Pitch Wars. Welcome, Akia. Glad to have you here. Yes, it's because we have writing live streams and things to help give you motivation so that way you can get your first story published. Whether you want to partake in author interviews or you want to talk with other writers in the community, or you want writing sprints or other miscellaneous writing events, I got you covered. We're streaming every single day with writing type events. And if you're following and subscribed, you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, beautiful. So how to do that quick ad. Let me throw it back up here, guys. Welcome back to the screen. All right, so we're going to go straight along into the next one. And let me think. So we have, that was what? Last Unicorn, Cursebreakers. Let's see. Last Unicorn, Cursebreakers. I want to make sure I didn't miss one. Cursebreakers. And then Last Unicorn was before that, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's go to the next one. All right. So we have, let me drop the follow and like banner. All right. So what is the title for this idea? Dead Reckoning. Noir detective. Ooh, noir detectives are fun. A female detective investigates her own murder. Okay, fun. The inspiration for this story came from a neighbor who drove up to me when I was on a walk this spring and told me it was the best time of year to start looking for bodies in the woods. What? What? I was like, I'm not saying what from like the idea. I'm just saying somebody came up to you and said, well, like, wait, what? that is such like that's so crazy that happened.
It's actually very creepy too.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, no wonder you'd want to turn this into an idea. That's actually really interesting. So this is a little bit of a shorter one. It looks like so far we have the idea for it. But I mean, I think this is enough of an idea that you could turn this into a full like mystery story. For those of you guys who don't know, for anyone who watched Breaking Bad, the core idea of Breaking Bad came from a newspaper article about a teacher who was caught selling meth to make money for his family. That's where the core idea of Breaking Bad originated. So it's interesting when we come up with ideas for stories, and I could tell that this is like this. They kind of have like the idea, and they're like, okay, well, what would I do next? Yeah, and I mean, especially so. Essentially, the female detective is dead, so the female detective is a ghost, and then essentially you'd have to frame it in a way where you probably don't want them to. I mean, you go either way, right? Either option A, you make it clear they're a ghost and you make the mystery being of who killed them, or you go option B, you don't let them know that it's a ghost and the journey is them trying to figure out this mystery, and then the surprise is, oh, they're dead. They're already dead. Maybe you think they're investigating somebody else's murder. You could go a couple different directions in this. Dead Reckoning. Yeah, if one of you guys took this idea, what would you two do with this?
For some reason, this actually reminds me a little bit of a book series that I liked as a teenager, Ghost Girl, where she died and she just like stayed around her high school and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It has been forever since I've read it, so I can't remember a ton of it, but...
Did she like die by going off a cliff?
No, she was at school when it happened.
Okay.
I think it was like something really embarrassing too.
Oh.
And like in the first book, like she ended up possessing somebody's body and like went on a date with this guy that she really liked because like she didn't want to accept that she was dead. It was a cute little series. I've got one of them around here.
Aw, that does sound cute. I like that.
All right.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm not much for detective stories myself. I mean, yeah, I say that I'm writing a mystery book. But this would be really neat. Actually seeing it like as a the detective maybe doesn't realize that she's dead at first, and then something happens that proves that she is, and then she's like, wait a minute, why? And then goes out and tries to find this.
Or like you could have like a time traveler aspect to it where she's bouncing around in time trying to figure out who's gunning for her death. Or
you could that'd be an interesting one. I mean, I can appreciate like the thriller. I do have fun with thriller and noir detective type stories. I think with mysteries like that, you have to play into how is this how you setting up the stakes and all the little red herrings, so that way the reader doesn't know what the final thing is. I know the mystery genre is a harder one because readers want to be surprised by the mystery at the end. So it's all about coming up with a clever mystery that keeps the reader guessing, because what keeps the reader guessing is, oh, this could be the thing, or this could be the thing, or this could be the thing. It's about, you're basically trying to create something that you want a puzzle that the reader thinks that they can solve, but then you subvert expectations and then they're surprised by the ending.
Yeah.
Like you want the ending to be surprising but inevitable too. Like you can look back
exactly,
and say, oh, yeah,
right? So it's like that's the perfect thing where you couldn't have guessed it, but then you get the ending, you're like, that was perfect for that character. That's why mysteries are hard to pull off, because it's hard to create a mystery that the reader can't guess while giving all the clues that don't give away too much. But yeah, okay, I like that. That's a detective noir is fun. So yeah. Yeah, I think you'd really have to play into the mystery and how you want to go about the noir. That story is crazy though. I think the person that comes up to you, I think you should start this as the first scene, and the person that comes up to you would be like part of the mystery. Like maybe they're the murderer, or maybe maybe you see blood on their pants leg or something like that, to that effect.
The harbinger.
Yeah.
The harbinger.
You're like, mass toaster, maybe it's time to move. I agree. If somebody comes up to me and asks me about the dead bodies in the woods near my house, I'd be like, yeah, I'm out. Unless I'm a quirky detective and I have a mystery to solve. Okay, perfect. So that one was easy. Let's move right along and we'll go into story idea number 10. Ooh, we are going into the lit RPG genre. So gaming in hell. Woof. All right. Which one of you guys want to take this?
You know, Soul, you're the gamer. Of the two of us, I played Tetris and Skyrim. So.
Yeah, well, I've got like over 1,000 games in all my libraries, so.
You're like, what? Soul doesn't play games at all. Soul hates games.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly why I'm going into making video games for a living.
I think this is a good one for you to take.
Yeah, no, I'll take this.
Okay, so.
All right, so gaming in hell and apocalypse fiction. All right, 30 unexpected gamers participate in a new virtual live reality game when something with the game testing goes wrong. One of the programmers used some hell equation in the program, and these gamers are teleported into a real-life hell dimension where they have to survive and try to find their way back home and avoid being captured at all costs by the demons that rule this world. I don't really know what inspired me about this. It's a cool idea that popped in my head one day.
This, by the way, this is a very similar plot line to there's an animated show on Netflix called The Hollow. It's the same storyline where characters are in a virtual reality world that's very supernatural, and they have to fight through it's like a competition type thing, I think, to get back to the real world.
Yeah, and they start out without their memories in the second season. It's like their virtual selves. I've watched it, so.
Yeah. I figured you probably knew, but I love that.
This actually does remind me of two other shows, though. Two animes. Sword Art Online, at least the general premise of being stuck in a game, and Dragon Drive. I know a lot of people aren't going to recognize that one. It's pretty old, but that one, yeah. Basically, the main character ended up being transported into this world where he it started out as a game where he had like this dragon that was his companion, and something happened along the way. I can't remember exactly what happened with it. It's been forever since I've seen it. He ended up living in that world with Chibi, his little dragon, and somehow had to find his way back. or something along those lines. The manga is a little different than the anime, and I've read and seen both, so. But this, I could really see this actually working.
Yeah, I mean, I like this type of story concept, as I'm a gamer as well. So I think coming from a gaming background, like even though we've seen maybe similar stories, I think that idea of getting stuck in a game world and trying to figure out how do you get out of it is fun. I think what the way to make the story unique is what is the type of game world, or what is this type of virtual reality game world. That's how you make it a unique game experience. Is this like a fantasy type game? Is this like a first person shooter type game? Like we have demons, so it makes me suggest it's more on fantasy, but they say apocalypse. Yeah, so I think it's just like clarifying what type of gamer do you want to reference. Are we getting stuck in like space? Is it going to be like a space type thing? So I think there's a couple different ways you could take it, but I think you want to think like what types of games do you want to draw inspiration from? I know the lit RPG genre is really popular. What was that?
I mean, it says real life hell dimension, which I mean, that is both broad and not, because a hell dimension could be a lot of things, but it also does seem to come with a certain kind of expectation.
Which makes it think like, okay, so is it the real world, but then crazy shit happens and they're like, they open the door to a house and they get sucked in by like squids and tentacles and they get their face torn off? Like, is that the type of hell dimension we're looking at?
They deal with hell dimensions a lot on like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. They don't show them, but they talk about them. So I mean, there's that's an interesting, like, you never get to actually go there really, except for like for a season in Angel. So it'd be cool to see somebody actually like what is a real life hell dimension and kind of like in that, I don't know, dynamic or world or whatever. Like, yeah, the squid with the tentacles and the face ripping. Yes, please show me more.
I was like,
I can almost actually see it being like a virtual reality game that ends up like they don't realize that something went wrong at first, but like somewhere along the way something happens that tips them off and it's like really suspicious, and then another thing happens, and then another and another, and then suddenly they're like, wait a minute, holy crap, this is real. It's like a huge shock to them or something. Honestly, like that actually would be a neat twist.
Like one of them actually dies.
It looks like we have Stephanie was saying, she was saying, this was mine and I have an idea for a sequel as well. I'm still figuring out the idea. I haven't even started writing yet. So I mean, like the gaming, you're talking with gamers, so it's like I think we like the idea. Flesh out more. Just figure out what type of world, what type of gaming world. And I think that's how you'll draw in whatever type of gamers you want into this. Right? Because there's a difference from a type of there's different types of genres with gaming. So it's like, I think that's how you cater to it. The hell dimension thing is fun. So maybe to define what type of hell dimension, what type of monsters do we get to deal with? Because it's technically demons and hell, real life. Yeah, I like it. Good luck with the process. All right.
I would like to see the cat.
I want to see the.
Here's my baby.
Hello, oh, precious. Hello.
All right, so let me hop back into the chat. So we had the previous poll. All right, and so it looks like we have a tie from the first round. We have a tie. So it looks like we have a toss-up between the Russian Roulette Hangman and then the Hidden Spark Paranormal Vampire Vamp. Or Vampire Fae. Let's see. I forgot if it lets me show the poll. Perfect. So here was the first one. So far the Russian Roulette and the Hidden Spark will go on to the next round. All right. Perfect. I'm going to set up the second poll as we now have the last 4 stories. So we have The Last Unicorn, our fantasy epic. We have Cursebreakers, the fantasy romance, and then we have Dead Reckoning. I can spell reckoning right. Dead Reckoning, Detective Noir. And then we have our gaming one. What was the gaming one called again?
Gaming in Hell.
Gaming in Hell. Gaming in Hell, our apocalypse fiction. All right. I just started up that second poll in the YouTube chat. So if you're here on YouTube, vote for the next round. Which one did you like the most? We got our 4. We have The Last Unicorn, Cursebreakers, Dead Reckoning, and Gaming in Hell. All right, perfect. So onwards and upwards. Once again, guys, we're getting some really interesting and unique story ideas. I feel like we're exploring a lot of different genres.
Oh yeah, I mean, it seems like we've got a good mix of like things that are leaning towards horror.
Yeah, and it's once again with this community, it continues to surprise me. I always think like, okay, I always think because I'm writing a fantasy novel, I'll attract mainly fantasy, but we get a mix of fantasy, sci-fi, memoir, horror, romance. But what actually holds people's attention the longest is the horror and thriller stories. Like time and time again, anytime there's a horror thriller story submitted, people always just watch longer. So it's like clearly maybe it's the mystery aspect of it.
I can see that.
All right. So let's see what we got next. So moving right along to, we got a sci-fi. Interesting. Okay. So the title of this right now is called, Hey, do you want to join our science club? Sci-fi. Idea. The son of a hero studies partner with his father's former arch nemesis and his daughter. Their goal is to defeat a secret society of evil mad scientists who plan to destroy the world and recreate it in their own image. Fun themes or ideas, redemption and forgiveness. So, okay, so I was trying to think, the son of a hero. So is it hero studies? Hero studies. Yeah. So the son of a hero studies partner with his father's former arch nemesis and his daughter to defeat an evil society of mad scientists who plan on destroying the world. So it's kind of interesting. It's sci-fi, but it kind of plays on this almost like comedic undertone of like, it's like potentially sci-fi comedy. I mean, all right, I'll admit one of my favorite all-time spoof musical things was probably Dr. Horrible. For anybody who knows Dr. Horrible's sing-along.
I love that.
Way back. One of my favorite, but that's a very like very corny scientist vibe. This one feels kind of like a sci-fi with maybe, it's like, hey, do you want to join our science club? There's something that they could go in a comedic element with it. But is that just me? Is that just, or what? How do you guys feel about that?
I could see that with the title, and for some reason, the last half of that made me think of the movie Igor.
Igor?
Because the whole evil scientists want to remake the world in their image kind of thing. Yeah, no, that was Igor.
Yeah. To defeat a secret society of evil mad scientists. So, I mean, essentially they're playing into that mad scientist stereotype. And it's about redemption and forgiveness.
I think the interesting part is the guy that teams up with his dad's former nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so his dad and this dude were like fighting, and then like something happened, and he teams up with the guy who was against his father and his daughter. Like,
interesting. So it's almost how like the stakes, like the tables like turn. He has to team up with the used to be bad guy from the last era to now go fight the current bad guys of this era.
Yeah, which is kind of I'd like to see a little bit more of that, because that sounds interesting to me. Like, and it definitely ties in with the themes of redemption and forgiveness, like a band of misfits, the former bad guys, anti-heroes trying to stop the new bad guys. Yeah,
awesome.
With science.
Beautiful. So we'll add that next one up. Hey, do you want to join our science club? Sci-fi. scientists, mad scientists. Okay, perfect. Let's move right along to the next one. We have beautiful. It looks like we got horror. When you guys want to take this?
I'll take it. I haven't done one in a
Okay.
minute. I like horror. This one is called Darling Days. It's a horror and a character study. I don't know. Told through an audio tape recordings, Joyce Darling begins to document her husband's increasingly unsettling and unbearable behavior. Meanwhile, a serial killer disturbs the peace of their tiny Colorado town. The story would be told as a series on YouTube. Visuals are kind of up in the air, but it's mostly told through audio. And it's audio theater. The analog horror trend. Oh, I don't know anything about that, but I'm immediately intrigued. Also, films like Hereditary, Scenes from a Marriage, Possession, the 1981 version, and Rosemary's Baby. All classic horrors.
Ooh, I recognize all those movies. I mean, Hereditary is a little newer, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, Hereditary. You're right. That's
Hereditary. I think is from like 5 to 10 years ago. I think, if I recall. But Possession is older. Rosemary's, of course, is a classic. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea so far. I think it's interesting. I'm analog horror trend. I'm trying to think of if I've seen any videos. I think what it is it's basically it's a video style where people are doing the stock footage of what you're seeing as they're narrating creepy horror stories.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the style of it, which there's a trend for that. And I mean, people love audio, so I think this is definitely something you could play into.
I found the wiki on it.
What would you pull up?
It says a subgenre of analog horror is typically cited as originating between the late 2000s and mid 2010s, mainly with YouTube videos, specifically from somebody named Stephen Chamberlain's No Through Road in January of 2009. The series inspired other works. So yeah, some analog. Netflix announced that it would adapt an analog horror podcast, Archive 81. So I mean, like, you can look that up and see what to get it kind of like the original, the OG or analog.
When I just type in analog horror, it just says it's a subgenre of horror fiction and offshoot of the found footage film genre.
Oh, okay. So those two things.
I think that actually makes sense by analog. Yeah. That makes sense with the audio recording. So it's kind of like if like Blair Witch was like an audio format of them just kind of talking through it. I think that's what it is.
Okay, so like so found recordings instead of found footage, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it seems like.
That sounds kind of crazy cool.
Yeah, and I mean, this should definitely be a podcast. Hands down, like this should, Tiara, I know you shared it, you're like, this is mine. I didn't flesh out the description as much. So yeah, I can answer any questions. But this, if you do it as a YouTube, make it a podcast. And make each podcast make like each one like an episode or like the next chapter in the story. Or like the next recording that was found. That's kind of cool. There was actually a horror movie, or there was a horror thriller movie, I think last year. I think it came out during last Halloween time. I don't know if either of you guys saw it. It was on Netflix. It was a thriller. I wish I could remember what it was, but it's like the main character has to watch a house for a weekend, and he finds like a bunch of like recordings in the house. Recording kind of tell the experience.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
it was a fun Netflix. It was just a fun Netflix thriller, but it kind of gave me that like vibe where the main character is finding these different audio tapes, and each audio tape is basically exploring like the serial killer, the mystery.
That's Tara says that she's currently writing them as individual tapes. So
yeah, I think that's perfect. And I think for husband and serial killer disturbs the peace. And I think the serial killer, like once again, you go with a murder mystery. It's how do you keep people engaged with the mystery aspect of it, so that way they don't know.
And part of that is the husband's increasingly disturbing behavior because he is the serial killer, or are they two semi-related or
almost got
unrelated?
some Amityville horror type vibes, or Shining, right, where they're a normal character and they become
the psychological spiral
but they
into
also say a serial killer, so they could be a pre-existing serial killer.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's fun. I think with doing it through YouTube, so definitely make sure it's a podcast. For visuals, I would rely on AI to create AI visuals to help speed up the process. I would also research other YouTube channels, like what types of visuals that the top 20 or 10 channels in this format are doing well, and what type of visuals those audiences are expecting. That's the research that I would do. And then that would dictate how you go about it.
I've looked into that a little bit because this is actually something that I'm kind of interested in doing as well. And I've seen a lot of people just use like backgrounds, like like if you're talking about a forest, do a background of a forest. So not necessarily and having dealt with AI and trying to like animate my own videos a little bit. It's just really difficult to do characters, especially if you're doing a longer piece. So any more static images,
more like settings, right? More settings and vibes.
Anything that can stay on the screen for 5 minutes is going to be way easier to manage, especially
I think the music, if you have music in between, is very important as well. So I think music sets up the vibe.
And you have like a bunch of options for free music on YouTube as well. They have like a catalog for in lots of different styles and stuff. So yeah, it's cool. That's a cool thing to play.
Yeah, Tiara, that's really cool. You said The Shining's also on my inspo list. Yes, I think that's really cool. Good luck with the development process. If you have like questions about it, definitely feel free to ask. Reach out in the future. So that is fun. All right, let me add that. So now we have that one is our second one. So we have Darling Days. Darling Days, which is horror / audio found audio footage. Perfect. All right, so onwards and upwards. We got number 13. Maybe. All right, here we go.
What?
All right. This is interesting. Okay. All right. All right. So I'll take this one. So the meatloaf that ate normal L. I'm wondering if L is the name or if it got cut off, but I think that's the meatloaf that ate normal L. What genre does it seem like this idea falls into? Children, middle school. Being a 5th grader is hard, but it is harder when you live in a town where Sasquatches, teachers who are retired mad scientists, Elvis clones, and other such things are the normal. After Jack Smith's dad decides to pick and move his family to normal, undecided state, you could play around with that. His life is turned upside down. After his favorite teacher, Dr. Franks, is accused of setting a giant meatloaf monster rampaging through the school, must help prove his innocence with the help of his friends, the Lost Boys, and his annoying Bigfoot classmate Penelope. Things become complicated when the mystery threatens his newly found popularity. Themes: friendship, acceptance, inspiration, Gravity Falls, love it, Erie, Indiana, Father Brown, Sherlock Holmes. Great. Absolutely some great inspirations. Do we see this as like an animated show then? Is this like an animated? I'm kind of wondering.
Totally cute if it was.
Yeah, I think
that's animated or a comic. Either one.
It could work. So I mean, animated comic can always fall into the same category. But yeah, I think it totally the initial setup of it gave me goosebumps vibes originally. And then we went into it, and it's a little bit more like, okay, a little bit more paranormal, supernatural kind of vibes from it. What do you guys think?
I think
Penelope, it's a win for you, right? We got our classmate Penelope.
I don't think I'm triggered because I have huge feet, so, and nothing ever fits. So no, I'm just kidding. They're not huge.
Okay, I was like,
I tried, but yeah, I know I'm in it, so I love it.
Elementary. The
Oh,
Meatloaf at 8, normal, elementary. Cool. So it just got cut off.
that's a
Excellent.
cute idea. I mean, there's a lot of you could do a series, a children's series with each one having a
Yeah, I
specific.
totally see this as a series. This you could either do it as like each episode is them like if this is an animated series or comic, each episode or chapter is them learning a different creepy paranormal thing about the town of Normal. I think you should call it the town of Normal. Like there's something that's kind of like interesting about that.
It has to be in either Indiana or Illinois because that's where everybody puts the weird places. It seems like Erie, Indiana.
You could totally honor that.
Hawkins in Indiana or Illinois? Hawkins from Stranger Things.
Is Stranger Things is I think Indiana.
Was it Indiana?
I want to say yes. I think it was Indiana.
I think
everybody
I still feel
lumps
like
the
you should
weird
name the
stuff
town.
Indiana.
I think you should name the town Normal. The family to Normal. And oh, it was just the state was undecided. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is the town of Normal.
Definitely
There's something very fun about that.
Mm-hmm.
Undecided state. Yeah. That I have no clue. Make up your own state.
Exactly. It's a state of mind.
It's the state of mind. After his favorite teacher. And then the journey itself is it sounds kind of like a murder, like a detective-ish type story where they're probably also dealing. So we got the Lost Boys and the best friend who's a annoying Bigfoot classmate. Things become complicated when this mystery threatens his newfound popularity. And this is for a 5th grader. Yeah, so this is fun. I think this could work towards the genre. And I think you could actually target this towards children. You could probably target this towards young adult if you did it as an animated series and make it a little bit more wider. I mean, like if you guys think about like Gravity Falls, what's that? What audience is that? Young adult? Is that children?
Yeah, it's like teen. I think it's like considered like teen or something or.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember exactly.
I've watched a
lot, but
if it's an animated, I would target the same audience as Gravity Falls. I think that's how I would go about it. Sherlock Holmes is a little bit more mature. Not familiar with either with these two, but I think that's how I would target it because it definitely kind of has that vibe.
Gravity Falls is kids because it was on Disney. It was on Disney Channel.
That makes sense.
Erie, Indiana was like haunted. I think the dad in that it's there's a little kid that's the main character, I think, and like his dad's a cop, and there's all these weird things that are going on. So it's like, yeah, it's more of the Goosebumps group, not so much the older kids.
All right. Well, beautiful. So I think that is excellent. Let me go back and check up the poll. Originally, I was going to add my idea at the end, but I realized I don't want my idea to take away from the communities. So I'm going to abstain.
Are you going to at least read it for us?
I was going to be ironic because I realized in thinking through the last hour, I realized that if I put the idea, people might vote for it just based off favoritism. Yeah. I was going to submit Hermes the cat as a story. I was like that might just I don't want it to win by default. Okay. So as I'm looking now into, let's see. All right. So let's go back to our vote. We have Cursebreakers. Ooh, and the other ones were a tie. So we literally almost had Last Unicorn, Dead Reckoning, and Gaming in Hell were all tied. So it looks like this one was the closest one. Last time it looks like the other one was one. So Cursebreakers right now is a winner. And then the previous round, I want to say it was tied between Russian Roulette and then Hidden Sparks. All right, perfect. And now we are going to so I'm going to set up a new poll. And we will do the last poll. So let's get the last batch in here. What were the last 3? So we had our mad scientist. Hey, do you want to join our science club? Let's just go mad scientist, science fiction, sci-fi. And then we had Darling Days, which was our horror found hoarder / audio. And then we had our what was it called? It was
the Meatloaf
Paranormal Elementary.
That one.
All right, perfect. So those are the last 3 we got here. I just threw this up. Let's see. And then making sure I got this right. All right, here we go. So let's do this. So this time, to make it even, I will add our joke one. Oh my god, people don't vote on mine though. All right, guys, vote. Let's do it. So round 3 of voting is live over on YouTube. So if you're here on the YouTube channel, vote. Which of the last 4 did you like the most? So we had our mad scientist one, which was, hey, do you want to join our science club? Our Darling Days, our horror audio found footage. The Meatloaf 8 normal elementary, our children's. And then I added the first scared crow. If anyone wants to see a crow tackle the evil Kara Joffman. Oh man, I would be so honored if people came up with spoofs about the about Last Scarecrow eventually, or the Kaufman brand. I think spoofs are kind of like an honor as long as it's not being derogatory. Personally,
yeah, it's like having Weird Al cover your song.
Exactly. Right. If Weird Al makes a song about like one of your
Last
things,
Scarecrow,
success. Success.
Absolutely.
Oh god, that'd just be funny.
I know.
All right, vote. Bring your votes in. So far we've had, what was that? 13 stories, and we've had a lot of stories today. So what did you guys think of today's submissions?
Really neat and really diverse.
We got some really cool ideas. I feel like I'm kind of inspired, but I kind of want to like create a story now that's like, I feel like I'm feeling horror vibe. So I feel like I kind of want to create like a horror vibe. Maybe have a unicorn in there, you know, who knows? Maybe have some ghosts, have some undead mysteries. Maybe it's all in a game. Like I'm gonna turn all 13 ideas into one story.
One mega story.
This
is the multiverse. Oh man. All right. So it looks like we have about 9 votes here. And I think regardless, we still have the clear winner of Darling Days. I think that one's still the obvious. It's the very clear winner.
I am always surprised at how creative people are. I just got to say that. Like, y'all are wonderful.
Wow. Okay. So we have 4 clear winners of this now. So we are now into our final round. All right, let's go into. All right, so we're in the finals. So the top 4 winners are, we have our Russian Roulette Hangman story. We have the Hidden Spark, the paranormal vampire fairy story. We have Cursebreakers, the fantasy romance. Which one was Cursebreakers again? Wait, I need to like double check. I need to remember my stories. Oh, that's right. Cursebreakers was the one with the well-defined plot with the romance. Absolutely. And then we have coming in 4th, our 4th option, Darling Days, our horror audio. Oof. All right, guys. I'm creating the final poll now. Ooh, I'm kind of like nervous. I don't know which one's gonna win. Like,
I'll be curious to see which one actually wins this.
okay, so we have a Russian Roulette Hangman, which was, I would say, like paranormal. Paranormal. Then we have Hidden Spark, which was paranormal vamp / fae. And then number 3 was Cursebreakers. Fantasy romance. And then option 4, Darling Days horror audio. All right, guys. I got all 4 options. Are we ready? Are we ready after this like epic like 3 hour? I was like, wow, we actually did go 3 hours. So I'm like, we went a good time. So 4 stories left. Paranormal, fantasy, romance, and horror. Are you ready in the chat? And let's start the vote. Let's see who the winner is of the Pitch Wars. So if you're here on YouTube, vote now. Vote now. Vote or forever hold your peace. Oof. What do you guys think? So regardless of the winner, while we're waiting for the votes to come in, which one was your guys' favorite stories? Except for the ones that you submitted, except for your own. Like we know.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna say mine. No, honestly, even if you include mine, Cursebreakers. Just I love that entire idea. That was so neat.
Mm-hmm. It was. I think because it was well defined. I think the plot was well planned out.
Oh yeah.
Anything that makes it sound like somebody's brain is swirling into insanity works really well for me. So Open House and Darling Days, those psychological downfalls, those are really appealing to me.
Interesting. I'm trying to think of which one was my favorite. I would say mine was that's a hard one because there's so many of these genres I actually would have read. I think I kind of like the horror paranormal element of the Russian roulette one. I think I kind of like that one, the Hangman. I'm kind of in that like darker vibe. I think Cursebreakers was really interesting. I want to see more of the world. Kind of like the gaming one though. I did like the game and that spoke to me. Like I want to see a gaming story is fun. Okay, so oof, man. And I think before we announce the winner, I think something to note and something to take into account is we're voting on which idea sounded the most interesting. It's important to once again recognize that every single idea was at a different stage of development. Some of them were brand new. Some of them clearly had a lot of timing. All of these ideas also cater to different audiences, right? So like we're basically comparing some like paranormal to fantasy to sci-fi to gaming. Like there's a lot of different genres here. So I think the important thing to take away from this, from the Pitch Wars, is how did people respond to it? How did we respond to it? And what are ways for you to further flesh out the story if you wanted to invest time? I think that would be the takeaway. And now for our winner. All right, guys, drum roll. And let's see how many votes do we have. We have 8 votes. All right. 8 votes. And oh my goodness. Oh wow. It's tied. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. It's an even tie. It is an even tie right now. Ooh. Oh man. Okay.
We need a tiebreaker.
I know, clearly. Oh man, this is this is nerve-wracking. Okay, so we're going to get a tiebreaker vote in. So if you have not voted yet, make sure to cast your vote, because right now we are evenly tied between all the options. All the options are tied. Which one is your favorite? Oh, we got another vote. It looks like one just pulled ahead at 9 votes. Do we have any more votes coming in? Do we have any more votes? Any more? Bueller. Do you have any more votes coming in at 9 votes? Is there going to be a 10th one? All right, here's your final announcement. Takers, any takers? Voting will end in 3, 2, 1, and the winner of the first Right Now Story Idea Pitch Wars is The Russian Roulette Hangman, a paranormal mystery. Woo! And I think this definitely deserves a special round of applause. All right, so that was really awesome, really, really fun. I'm so inspired by today's stream, and great job everybody who submitted your stories. Let me know if this type of stream brings value to you. I always try to test out and play it with different formats to see what works and see if like I had fun. I don't know about you two. So Penelope, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah.
Can I make a quick confession right quick?
All right, give it to me.
So I was walking down my street this spring when my neighbor pulled up in her car and rolled down the window and said, "Hey, did you know that this time of year is the best time of year to find bodies in the woods?" And drove off.
Ooh, that was yours.
That was mine. Yeah, that is actually
the creepiest thing ever. I can't believe that actually happened to you.
I couldn't either. I was like, and she didn't even wait for me to say anything. She was just like, "Bye." And I was like, okay. So like, but that was actually the inspiration for the Love Spell Murders. So, but
Ooh.
I took it in a weird direction. I wanted to see what anybody else would have to say with it about it, you know? And it was like, y'all came up with some great ideas. Like, it's such a weird.
I think Detective Noir is fun. I think with Detective Noir is a cross between the mystery genre and then that kind of like old school. Detective Noir is really its own genre, but it's a little of an older genre. I don't think I've seen any modern Detective Noir stories or modern like movies that have done well for that genre.
I think that cyber noir, like kind of the Matrix and like
cyber noir, I guess, is the more like modern version
like
of it.
Blade Runner, would have been really the first kind of re-envisioning of it. So yeah, it's so much fun though. Like I'd love to see like a bunch of 20-year-old actors and actresses do like an old black and white noir with modern language and a modern interpretation of something. So now I have to go rewrite my book.
Was like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a classic.
Yep.
It's interesting because the special effects and animation for Roger Rabbit was done during an era where it's still like it's that cartoony vibe. I feel. Did you guys like that movie? Did you guys ever see Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah,
it was such a unique experience, and it worked because it knew what it wanted to be, right? But it worked as a detective mystery, including the Looney Tunes characters and
it was so cool trying to figure out like
how the original Space Jam worked because it knew what it wanted to be. So yeah, awesome. So this was awesome, and I thank you all for being involved as well. Thanks for joining in the journey. Soul, Penelope, thank you all. Thank you both for joining me. Your feedback has been incredible, and especially talking through the pitches. I know a lot of the writers who submitted it probably found a lot of value. All right, beautiful. And let me wrap up the stream. So as I get to creative writing on the morrow. So if you're looking for something to watch next, down in the YouTube description is our last writing event, the Blurb and Pitch Fest from a couple weeks ago. So check it out if you haven't already. It gives some tremendous value. If you need help with blurbs of your book or script. So definitely go check it out. And if you're looking for tomorrow's stream, the Create Right Now podcast is going to be awesome. I'm going to be inviting another YouTube and author brand, Rella B Books, as we chat about how to turn yourself into an author brand. And I know we set up some fun talking points. Let me just touch that. So building a recognizable brand is the key to earning trust, attracting opportunities, and driving sales. In this episode, we'll dive into how you can transform yourself into a standout author brand. We're going to talk about establishing a unique identity, connecting with an audience, leveraging strengths, growing your influence, and monetizing your brand. So tomorrow is going to be a big one for brand building. If you are an author or you've come up with some books and you want to establish your brand, come join us because we're going to be talking about it and we're going to be learning how Rella is doing it successfully with her children's brand. So that will be tomorrow's episode, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'll be here. Come join us. And don't forget, if you like this stream, tap the like button on your way out. Let us know that you got value out of it. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. Awesome. It's been a great experience today. I had a lot of fun with you, with all y'all. This is definitely cool. Yeah, I could tell that you guys enjoyed it as well. So much fun. Love the stream. I'd love to see this kind of stream again. So fun. Absolutely. So feedback is always very much appreciated. I'll post some polls on some of these more unique streams I've been trying on the YouTube community poll, the YouTube community post. So make sure that you're subscribed and you'll see when I post like polls to kind of get feedback from you, the writers in the community. So I can do more of what brings you value. This was absolutely great. Absolutely a great exercise in writing and developing story ideas. And that, my friends, is all that I got for you today. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.